everyone. Welcome to episode 254 of the Sports Ballers Podcast. I'm Eric Meyer. I'll be hosting this evening, and we've got a lot to get to tonight, namely my favorite subject, the NBA. It's back, baby. Summertime is gone, which means it's basketball season just a little bit earlier than we were expecting. But of course, we've also got football shenanigans to discuss, along with the closing week of the Major League Baseball season and all the playoff ramifications that come with that. So buckle up, should be an exciting show. Play that music. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers Podcast. My name is Eric. I am joined by Corey Puffett and Evan Ash as always. How are you fellas doing this fine evening?
Doing fine. How about yourself?
Doing okay. We're getting a little bit of a late start here on account of some technical difficulties earlier with some audio issues. So we'll be repeating a little bit of what we had already said, or at least what I'd already said. I was mostly the only one talking. But let's get underway. Corey is a little busy. He's also not feeling so great, so he might be taking a little
Which
bit
is
of
part of the
a
reason that we
backseat.
had those issues, because I'm not feeling great. So the three of us are all remote, and it's been a long time since we've done a fully remote podcast, and I guess forgotten some of the setup that works for
Well,
that.
we
So
forgive you for that because nobody wants to harken back to those days. The days of exclusively remote podcasting was pretty bleak. So
yeah,
what's not bleak is the NBA because the season is about to get started, and training camp I believe starts today for a lot of teams. And of course, big trade news. We've got a blockbuster as of this afternoon. The Portland Trailblazers have received Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, some guy named Tumani Kamara. I think he was a Suns second-round pick. I don't know. And along with the Milwaukee Bucks first-round pick in 2029 and their 2028 and 2030 pick swaps, so opportunities for them in the future. Meanwhile, the Phoenix Suns received Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Keon Johnson, and Nasir Little, and the Milwaukee Bucks receive Damian Lillard. Yeah, big deal. Kind of been waiting for this for a little while. We'll start with the Blazers. Again, sorry to you fellas for having to hear this one more time, but we will do it again. So acquiring Drew Holiday gives the Blazers a little bit of an opportunity to maybe increase the value of this package they got for Damian Lillard. Drew Holiday's a valued commodity among a lot of contenders because he provides a veteran presence at the point guard position. He can defend the point of attack better than just about anybody in the NBA. And so you probably expect several teams to maybe pick up the phone and try to make a deal happen for him. Looking at teams like Golden State, maybe they could flip Chris Paul for him if they just really don't want to deal with him, or maybe the Boston Celtics or the Miami Heat, or the Blazers could keep him on the roster for at least the start of the season and then maybe move him sometime later as teams sort of figure out what they actually need and whether Holiday is up their alley anyway. But the intriguing player that they got, as far as I'm concerned, is DeAndre Ayton, who sort of emerged a few years ago as a very, very good player, borderline all-star level center for the Phoenix Suns. But the last couple of years, his value there has diminished due to certain trades, players that they've acquired, and some disgruntled situations with him and the coach and the general manager, and people not really considering him valuable enough to offer a max, but then they did because they didn't want to lose him for nothing. And so it's just been a little bit of a circus surrounding him. So Aiton being able to get out of that Sun situation and onto a team that has fellow young players like Scoot Henderson, who the Portland Trailblazers just drafted with the third overall pick, it gives him a nice young pick and roll partner to sort of grow with and be a part of a team that obviously wants him around because they just traded for him, which is not the case with the Suns. And so it gives him a chance to sort of reemerge as a burgeoning young star in the NBA instead of just a forgotten, borderline bust that people were kind of talking about him in Phoenix parts. So the Suns, on the other hand, I don't love this for them because a lot of people think that this move is based on just getting rid of Aiton's contract, which is fine, I guess, but this is a sort of a desperate trade as far as I'm concerned, given the fact that I believe that DeAndre Ayton has some value in the NBA. The return of Yusuf Nurkic, who presumably replaces Ayton as the starting center on the Suns, that's bad. Like a lot of people are saying, oh well, he's there to play defense. Well, Yusuf Nurkic doesn't play defense. He's a worse defender than DeAndre Ayton, and we saw what happened to Ayton when he went up against Nikola Jokic in the playoffs, and it wasn't great. So don't expect a whole lot from Nurkic, especially don't consider him to be a healthy player. Like at least with DeAndre Ayton, you were pretty much guaranteed for him to provide you 70 to 80 games a year. Nurkic is old. He's got an injury history. He's got cement feet. He can't move. He's just not a good player anymore. And his value mostly to a team would be as a screen and roll type of guy like he used to be with Damian Lillard in Portland. Don't count on him to be the anchor of a pretty bad looking defensive roster. I mean that's not going to make them better. And then you add on Grayson Allen, who, I mean, sure, he's developed into a decent NBA player, much to my surprise and chagrin, because, screw that guy. But also, he's just not that good of a player in terms of what the Suns need, in the sense that he kind of likes to free for all a little bit. We saw what he did at the end of that series against the Miami Heat, where somehow the buzzer went off and Milwaukee's season ended with the ball in his hands, where he was trying to make a play instead of putting up a shot or getting it to somebody good. I mean, I just don't think that that's really a guy that moves the needle greatly. And the other two guys, Keon Johnson and Nasir Little, they're fine, but I don't know if they're really playoff rotation caliber guys. So the Suns have a lot of dudes, but none of them are really that good, at least except for their top three, which we've talked about in the summertime when they traded for Bradley Beal. I don't frankly see a championship level roster here. And I sure as hell don't see a team that can compete with the headliner of this trade, which is the Milwaukee Bucks acquiring Damian Lillard, which, as far as I'm concerned, if these guys stay healthy, this is the favorite to win it all. Like, I know there are some teams in the West that could push the Bucks, that could challenge them, like the Nuggets, like the Lakers if they were to get to the NBA Finals, like even the Golden State Warriors. But top to bottom, this is the best roster. They've got a top 3 player in the league in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They've now got a borderline top 10 player that complements him really well, playing the guard position versus, Giannis, who's a forward, and they can run pick and rolls together. And Lillard's biggest weakness is obviously his defense. But when you've got Giannis, when you've got Chris Middleton, when you've got Brook Lopez behind him, the defense is going to be stout regardless of who's playing on the perimeter. And I don't think there's as much of a worry there. I realize Jrue Holiday is a great perimeter defender and was a big part of their identity, but you can cover up for Lillard's lack of defense, and the benefit that you get from what he provides to you on offense is tremendous. I don't see a team that stacks up better on paper, but we know the game's not played on paper; it's played on the hardwood, and we have to see what this team actually looks like. Obviously, health will be paramount, and it'll be an opportunity for Damian Lillard to finally play at a high level beyond the first round when it feels like his team actually has a chance to win. Because I've criticized Lillard a little bit as a first round star. I talk about a lot of guys like that. I talk about Donovan Mitchell like that. I used to talk about that with Jamal Murray a lot, where it's like, hey, he goes off in the first round when they're playing a 45-win team that can't play any defense. But what happens after that? Well, we saw what happened after it this year. They won the NBA Finals. And Damian Lillard's hoping to maybe do the same thing with the Bucks. So I'm excited for them. Obviously, the pressure is up on both Giannis and Damian to get this done, because they are now, not just in my opinion, but the Vegas betting odds have them as a significant favorite to win the NBA title now. And we'll see if they're able to pull it off. But it should be fun to watch no matter what, because these are two great players, two fun guys to watch, two easy guys to root for at that, playing on the same team. And you got to give Giannis a little bit of a shout out too. He kind of held Portland or Milwaukee's feet to the fire a little bit when I think 6 weeks ago he came out and said, look, I'm not sure I'm going to re-sign here. I'm not sure that I'm going to stick around if this team doesn't stabilize and prove itself willing to continue to move forward with building a championship roster around me. And that sort of spurred the Bucks on, because I think they would have been perfectly happy to just say, hey, let's go into next year and run it back with Jrue Holiday and with Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis and the same old crew. But Giannis basically said, if this team's not good enough, I'm going to bounce. And So it kind of spurred them to go add another star, and to their credit, they did. Um, Obviously, the big loser here is the Miami Heat. They were supposed to get Damian Lillard. It seemed inevitable that they were going to get him just because that was where he wanted to go, and he apparently was going to refuse to play anywhere else. I don't think Damian Lillard is going to refuse to play with Giannis. Like, that would be career suicide. That would be legacy ruining if he says, you know what, I really just wanted to be in South Beach because the weather's so nice. Like,
I mean, his number one priority is not to play in a place that's really nice outside of the indoor facility you're playing games in. His priority is to win. He wants to win a championship, and Giannis gives him a chance to do that. Not that Miami wouldn't give him that chance they have some talented players obviously down there, but Giannis also gives him that chance.
Yeah, and I would say that the Bucks give him a better chance because they have Giannis, and they have, I think, a top to bottom right now better roster than the Heat would have with Damian Lillard on the team. So I think that this is a better move from a basketball perspective for Dame. If there's something else going on about, oh, I don't want to live in the Midwest because it's cold, okay, I mean, grow up. And if it's also, well, with the Bucks, I'm for sure the number 2 option on the team because Giannis is better than me, and I don't want to be a Robin to somebody's Batman. I wanted to go be the guy that won a championship. Well, then, yeah, Miami would have been a better choice, but the chances of you winning would have been greatly diminished because Miami with Damian Lillard would be a championship contender, no doubt. They wouldn't be the favorites like Milwaukee is now. Like, the level of expectations for this Bucks team greatly exceeds whatever Miami would have, regardless of what they sent back to Portland. Like, a Lillard, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo trio is great. But a Middleton, Giannis, Damian Lillard trio, significantly better. And then when you consider the down roster talent as well, it's clear to me what the better move was from a basketball standpoint. And frankly, I mean, Damian Lillard has always struck me as a guy who wants to win more than anything. And this is what this move is about. And if he can go be, like, the thing is, to be Robin to someone's Batman, honestly, Damian Lillard is clearly not as good as Giannis, but he's going to score more points than him, right? Like, at the end of the day, if you're holding up the trophy and it says your stat line was, I averaged 32 points and 7 assists in a series, and maybe you might even win Finals MVP by virtue of those stats, even though everybody knows Giannis is the better player, Giannis is the guy who helped you win the most, you still get a lot of glory from that. Like, there's a huge boon to your legacy if you're able to take over a championship series. And that's what we've been waiting to see Dame have a shot to do, because we've seen him hit big shots in the first round. We've seen him send the Oklahoma City Thunder home. We've seen him send the Houston Rockets home back in 2014. But those were all in the first round. And the first round doesn't mean anything. Like, you got to do it when the big money's on the line, at the business end of the tournament. And now he's going to have a shot to do that. We'll see if he can get it done. Okay, so that's all we have for the NBA. It's just one trade, but it's a big one. We'll have a little bit more of a full preview for the NBA season in a few weeks when the regular season's ready to kick off. So for now, we're going to throw it to some college football to start, and then we'll do some baseball and then get to the pros. Let's start with the biggest story in college football. That is obviously the Colorado Buffaloes, who got shellacked by Oregon this week. And frankly, if you haven't been paying attention, you might have been surprised. If you understand how college football works, you saw this coming, because Oregon, despite the hype around the Buffs and despite their surprising start to the season, clearly Oregon was vastly more talented and vastly more prepared for this game, and it showed. And I don't think anybody should be shocked by that outcome.
Yeah, I'm not shocked. Colorado's defense has been bad. Like, they can't stop the run. They can't get off the field. And, you know, we were at Hershey Park again. Surprise, surprise. So, like, I would turn the game on my phone when I had a chance. And it seemed like every time I looked at the game, Oregon has the ball in plus territory. Like, is Colorado allowed to have the ball? I guess not, because it didn't seem like it. I don't even know what the score was, but it was a lot to a little.
It was 42-6 was the final.
They were fortunate not to be completely blanked. Like that
Yeah,
touchdown at the end. I mean, we talk about furs all the time in baseball. That was a fut to do.
you can try to write
Gee.
down that as a title option, but I don't even know. I guess you just spell FUTD, but
Yeah,
um,
basically.
well,
But
yeah, yeah, because the thing is, like Evan said, we would pop in, and it was fairly frequently we were popping in. It wasn't like once every 15 minutes, and every time it would be like, oh, Oregon's got the ball again. So that means that either the Buffs turned it over or they went 3-and-out. But it wasn't that long ago that we were watching, and Oregon was scoring a touchdown, and yet they have the ball again. So, yeah, again, Dion even said so himself. Coach Prime mentioned that Colorado's lacking the big boys, like both on the offensive and defensive lines. You kind of saw that against Colorado State. The pass rush was getting home, and it was wreaking havoc with Shadur Sanders. As the teams that they play get even better, like this week against USC, which I'm expecting another ass whooping to come for them, that lack of talent in the trenches is going to rear its head again. And so I think that people are, really, really hyped that Colorado took an L, or some people are. And, we know why some people believe that, and we know why some people are excited. And, but I also understand that there's been a hype machine around this team since week one when they upset TCU. And so people are kind of looking around saying, why are you guys hyping this team so much? I'm like, well, come on, you guys know why. But it doesn't mean that they're a team that was going to win the Pac 12. We knew that this wasn't actually a contender, but the fact that they're probably going to end up going to a bowl game and maybe even a decent one, that's impressive. Most people were picking them to win 3 games this year, and they've already done that.
And
weren't
three
they
games already would have
1-11?
been 300% better than they were last year.
Yeah, they went 1-11 last year. They haven't played any college football games of significance since like 2002. So, I mean, this is a big deal for them. It's just a really interesting team, but they're not a great team yet. And maybe Dion gets them to that level in a few years. I wouldn't count him out. I would expect him to continue to improve that program because not only is he proving himself to be a very good coach, but he also has a brand and there's a recruiting advantage to him being Coach Prime that comes with that. But this year was clearly not the year that they were going to just take over college football. They've just taken over our hearts and minds because they're so damn exciting.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself.
So some other relevant college football news. Well, maybe not relevant to everybody, but relevant to me. The Terps pummeled Michigan State on the road. Some Terps fans were, I don't want to say freaking out, but concerned with the fact that the team was seemingly playing sluggish football. I believe I think Alex Mayo, who may be tuning in, said something along the lines of, that was the most uncomfortable or uneasy 3-touchdown win I've ever seen. I'm like, but you still won by 3 touchdowns.
Oxymoron.
Yeah, so because the thing is, the Terps took control immediately. They jumped out to a 21-0 lead, and then they started to falter a little bit. They had some uneven play, and so they only ended up winning by 22 in the end. So they basically played even at after the first quarter blitz that they hit Michigan State with. But at the end of the day, it's a 4-quarter game, and what the score says at the end of it matters the most. And the Terps were favored by 7, and they won by 22. So I'm not going to take too much away from that other than positive vibes heading into this game against Indiana that they should also win, which will likely set them up for being 5-0 against Ohio State, and they'll probably end up putting the Terps in the top 25. And Corey, how this goes.
College game day is going to be there.
You know how this
back
goes.
in Columbus.
Every time the Terps are ranked because they start 4-0 or 5-0, they go play a blue blood team from the conference. Back in the ACC was Florida State, going into Doak to play Jameis Winston, and the Terps got ranked because they started 4-0 and they lost 63-0.
It never ends well.
Yeah, I would expect a similar outcome. I'm hopeful for better, but yeah, that's inevitable. But 5-0 is 5-0 if the Terps can get there. And, with the way their schedule looks with the Big Ten West being the Big Ten West, and they're not really drawing any of the tougher teams from there, and with Michigan State being down, the only losses, it appears, on their schedule are Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Now, they'll probably throw in a clunker or two against a team they should beat because that's what the Terps always do. But, it would not be unrealistic for this team to go 9-3 and be very underqualified for whatever bowl game they get put in, and probably get trounced. But maybe we could go somewhere cool again.
Oh yeah, or somewhere warm again.
Appreciate that too.
Yeah.
So speaking of relevant to only some of us on this podcast, Evan, Georgia Tech, baby, what happened?
What happened? What did they do? Who are these people and what did they do with the real Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets football program? Oh my goodness. Georgia Tech went to Winston-Salem and beat Wake Forest 30-16. Everybody is favored against Georgia Tech, except Bowling Green this week. I couldn't believe it. I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised. So, we got a win. I think that's win number 2 on the season, maybe. I don't even remember. But, a win's a win, a conference win, no less. It's just great news all around.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have 2 wins now. You lost week 1 to Louisville, which was ugly. But last week you beat, or 2 weeks ago, who did you guys play?
I don't know. Probably something terrible.
Was it? Yeah, okay. So it was probably a tomato can team that you guys handled. But yeah, conference win matters, even the ACC. I proffered this to you over the weekend. Any chance that Georgia Tech could be going bowling?
No, but
no. Okay.
Fingers crossed. Right?
All right. Well, I'll hold out hope for you. But
Clemson's still on the schedule. Georgia's still on the schedule. North Carolina's on the schedule. So there's a lot of good teams. Yeah.
Well, you only need 6, so maybe you can pull an upset in there somewhere or not. Who knows?
we win like 3 a year. So already ahead of schedule in that regard.
There you go. And so, college football news that other people might actually care about. Let's talk about that interesting game that happened while we were doing ERT at Hershey Park. Notre Dame versus Ohio State, where the Buckeyes scored a touchdown to walk it off. Not in overtime, mind you. To walk it off because the clock read 0. To score a touchdown to go up. I think, did they kick the extra point? They don't do that in the NFL anymore. But
no, there was no extra point.
So it was
by 3.
Yeah, so 13-10 was the final. From what, obviously didn't watch much of the game because didn't watch any of the game actually. But Notre Dame seemed to be in control for most of it, and they choked. Like, that's the vibe that I got. They were controlling both lines of scrimmage, and they gave up a couple of big plays, and it ended up costing them. It didn't help that they seemingly couldn't score on Ohio State, despite being able to handle Ohio State's pass rush. But, it's just.
All right. We're going to try and get them back here on Skype.
But
yeah. Orioles are up 4-1.
Yes, they are.
All right, we're back.
Georgia Tech beat South Carolina State 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so we back on?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So, Ohio State showed some vulnerability against Notre Dame. It'll be interesting to see what happens to them later on. I mean, this is one of the few years, and it's kind of been a recent trend where Michigan's actually been considered better than Ohio State. They've beaten them the last 2 years in the game. But Ohio State still has high-level aspirations of making the college football playoff. And eking out a win in South Bend is nice, but I expect more from a team that wants to be in the top 4. Evan, you got anything to add to that, or?
I mean, not really. I didn't see the game. I generally root against Notre Dame. I will say, the game was in South Bend. They should have won, and they didn't get it done. So,
doesn't break my heart either. I'm not a Notre Dame guy, but okay. So coming up on the college football slate this week, we've got, I'm going to say it, Big Noon Saturday, number 8 USC at Colorado, as we talked about before. That's not going to be much of a game, I don't think. And then we've also got some ranked matchups. Number 10, Utah at number 19, Oregon State. That'll be on FS1 on Friday evening. Then we've got number 24, Kansas. Is that
Uh-huh.
that's not Kansas State? That's Kansas.
Jayhawks.
They've
Yes.
got a number next to their name.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
They were in
So
the top 15 like last year. So
Oh my God. Number 24, Kansas at number 3, Texas. 3:30 on ABC. Oh, Texas. Well, you better beat Kansas at home if you want to be back. I don't care what they're ranked. So then we've got number 13, LSU at number 20, Ole Miss, 6 o'clock on ESPN. And then you've got number 11, Notre Dame at blank. What's going on there, man?
blank.
You don't have a name next to Notre Dame, at least not from what I see on the sheet.
Oh, well, are you being funny? Because it's Notre Dame at number 17, Duke, at 7:30 on ABC.
Well, I don't see a name on the sheet, but I'll take your word for it. So
I see
Notre
it.
Dame at Duke. Interesting. Hopefully that doesn't happen more. Anyway, so that's what we've got for college football.
College Game Day will be live in Durham on Saturday.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
First time ever.
They should go get
Interesting.
some Brique with Soul.
They should.
I mean, we should do that anyway, but definitely not to commemorate Duke football. Like, come on, let's not do that.
Maybe Danny Dimes will be there.
Maybe he'll be unemployed. That's why he's there.
He's
So
not
let's-
Danny
let's
Dimes.
move
He's not even close.
Let's move to some baseball. We've got the Maushan, who are currently playing the Nationals right now. And they are still in first place in the American League East. Their magic number is down to 2, which means if they win 2 more games out of their last 5, no matter what the Rays do, they will clinch the division. It seems like that's going to be necessary to win 2 games because the Red Sox certainly are not helping. They are currently trailing the Rays 5-0 in Fenway Park after losing to them yesterday as well. But the Orioles are currently beating the Nationals 4-1. Credit to the Nationals for scoring their first run in 4 games against the Orioles this year. Through the first 3 games of this season series, the Nationals were shut out. But they do have a run on the board today or tonight against the Orioles.
That's like actually impressive to be shut out 3 times by the same team in a season.
In
Yeah.
a row, right?
And-
Like the
and
Nationals
this
have
team-
scored a bagel all season long against the Orioles.
Yes, they had. So Orioles are in a good position. I don't think anybody is going to pretend like they're not. Even the most pessimistic among us, I would say, believe they're going to win the division. I don't see them blowing this. So that leaves the Orioles as likely being the 1 seed. Like if they win the division, they definitely will be because the only team that can catch them is the Rays, and that means that they will get a worse matchup because the Minnesota Twins are locked into the 3 seed and they will play the worst of the wild card teams. And the winner of that series will go on to face whoever wins the American League West, which is looking like it's probably going to be the Rangers at this point, but they've still got 4 games against the Mariners. We'll see how that all shakes out. But, you got to win the division anyway, right? Like you can't, people are saying, well, maybe we'd be better off in a wild card. No, you would never do that. That's ridiculous. So, the Orioles are probably going to win the division, probably going to win 100 games. That's all great. But it's not all great in Birdland. Unfortunately, got some tragic news last night about Brooks Robinson, the legendary third baseman, 16-time Gold Glove winner, passed away at 86 just a couple of hours before the start of yesterday's ball game between the Orioles and the Nationals. And obviously, none of us were around to see him play, but Oriole fans know who Brooks Robinson was, not just because there's a statue of him in Legends Park, or just because his number's hanging up in left field. It's because he's been around the team and had said such an impact on everybody that's currently with the Orioles or has been an Oriole for the last basically 60 years. He's been there the whole time. So it's a tough loss. I mean, I talk about it before though with certain people that when you lose them, even at an advanced age, when you still feel like you've lost somebody crucial, that says how important that person was. Like normally, somebody's 85, 86 years old, they pass away, and you're like, okay, that's life, that's how it goes. But he was still such an integral part of Orioles baseball, even at 85, 86 years old, that it feels like we lost somebody that was your best friend. And but that's a credit to the life he lived and to his legacy as a ball player.
Yeah, Brooks was around the ballpark pretty regularly, even as he got to be pretty old. Guess a couple memories I have is like I saw the clip, I guess the most famous clip from the World Series in 1970 in Cincinnati, where he's diving across the foul line and there's the AstroTurf and the puddles, and he hoses a guy over at first base, but like. That was incredible. If I were to play baseball, I would like to play third base, and I really wish I could play it that well. But I mean, obviously, that's not going to happen. And then the other thing, I heard a story. One of the producers on 105.7, Alex Woodward, was talking about setting up an interview for the radio with Brooks Robinson. So. Alex called Brooks at his house or something, and Brooks was so nice and was willing to talk, to some kid, but he said he had to go because he was expecting a call, and he'd be happy to talk to him again later after the call he was expecting, not knowing that this was the call he was expecting. So he was kind enough to just talk to some strangers. Some guy who just seemed to have cold called him from his perspective, but he seemed like he had time for everybody.
Along with obviously being a role model for a lot of people, it can't be understated that Brooks Robinson was a phenomenal baseball player. He is the undisputed greatest defensive third baseman of all time. Like that is without question. 16 Gold Gloves. If you look up his baseball reference page, you will see, if you look under his fielding runs saved for his career, the number for his career was 293, which outpaces every single baseball player in the history of the sport. It outpaces Ozzie Smith. It outpaces Andruw Jones. Every single one of them. Wow. So, he is, you could make a strong case that in terms of just pure defensive value, he's the greatest ever at that. And he can hit a little bit too. So pretty damn good player and a special human. And, sort of a fitting outcome of yesterday's game. I didn't know this. I found this out yesterday. Brooks Robinson still does hold the record for most games where his RBI was the lone RBI in the game. So he drove in the run that made it a 1-0 decision. Well, the Orioles won the game last night 1-0. So, kind of fitting, kind of eerie if you think about it that way. But and of course also Gunnar Henderson was the one that drove in that run. And while Gunnar wasn't playing third base last night, he certainly plays a lot of third base for the Orioles, and he figures to be the third baseman of the future for this team for hopefully a long, long time. So obviously rest in peace to Brooks Robinson, and go O's. I mean, keep this season going for him. I hope that they commemorate him with some type of patch during the postseason run. That would be great. And a life well lived.
I see there's a big 5 painted by the third base coach's box on the field at Camden Yards tonight.
As it should be. So yes. So on that somber note, Corey, do you have anything about the Yankees? I know there's not a whole lot to address with them. They're just as eliminated as they were last week.
Well, we're even more eliminated than we were last week because now it's official.
Yeah,
we were technically still alive last week. We were,
but only just.
Yes, you were alive, but only just.
Now it is.
Oh, goodness.
It's done.
Yeah, I mean, it was inevitable. We saw this coming months ago. The Yankees just didn't have it this year. Judge's injury sort of derailed their season. I mean, we'll have plenty of time to talk about what they do in the offseason if you want to address some of that now, or if we just want to move to football. It's up to you. I'm not going to make you suffer through Yankees talk too much if you don't want to, especially when you're not feeling great.
Yeah, we can get to them a little bit later.
Sounds good. Okay. So let's do a little bit around the league stuff before we move on to football, just to talk about some of these other playoff battles. We've talked enough about the Orioles and the Rays. The Orioles should be able to lock up the division, but things can happen. But either way, the winner of that division is going to be the number 1 seed. The loser is going to be locked into the top wild card. So that's going to be either the Rays or the Orioles as the 4 seed. The division winner in the AL West is very much up in the air. The Rangers currently are in first place, but they've got 4 games against the Mariners to finish the season, so they could easily end up falling out of the top spot and back into the wild card hunt. And so currently, effectively, there are 4 teams chasing 3 spots. The Rays, Orioles, and Twins have already locked theirs up, but the Astros, Rangers, and Mariners are in sort of a 3-way duke-it-out battle royale for the AL West, and the Blue Jays are also in the mix for a wild card spot. They keep finding a way to lose to Corey's Yankees, so they might mess it up for themselves. So that's the situation in the American League. Do we have any thoughts of how this is all going to play out? Because it is kind of exciting. Like they're right there with each other in the standings.
I do love when it's neck and neck like this. I'm hoping for pure craziness this weekend. Where I've to the point where I've run out of screens to watch all the games on. Right, like I'm trying to watch the Ravens and the Red Zone and the Orioles and whatever other baseball game I can find. Oh my goodness! So looking forward to that. The other team screwing up for themselves is defending champion Houston Astros.
Oh yeah,
what are they doing? So they lost 2 out of 3. Well, let's go back to September 15th. A couple weekends ago, they went to Kansas City and lost 2 out of 3. Then they lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles in Houston. And then this past weekend, they got swept at home by Kansas City. Right? What is happening here? What is that? That's not pennant chase baseball.
No, it is not. And it's also strange how bad they've been at home all season. I mean, I think they're sub 500 at home. That's locked up for them. Like,
wow,
that's shocking given the fact that not only are the Astros have been a great team for the last 6-7 years, they've been a particularly dangerous home team. Like when that dome gets rocking down there at Minute Maid Park, and everybody's going crazy, and they've got this little bandbox of a park with all these home run hitters.
Train is in there.
Yeah, they got a train. They got the Crawford boxes. Like it feels like going in there is an absolute hellscape, and yet, they're not winning there. So, that was why I thought last year's World Series was so interesting and potentially fun. Was you had Houston, who had such a great home field advantage, and then you've got Philly, which is just a madhouse. Like it just doesn't. You go in there in October, it feels like you're never going to get out of here without losing by 7 runs. Like you're just going to get your ass beat every single night. And the Astros somehow managed to take 2 games there.
They threw a no-hitter up there.
Yeah, like that. It looked like the World Series was over, and the Astros like, now we're going to throw a no-hitter here and take control back, and they did, and then they won in 6 games. So that was awesome. But don't know if we're going to be seeing that same magic out of Houston this year. But, the Blue Jays struggling against the Yankees, which is ill-timed. The Mariners lost a whole bunch of games in a row to the Rangers. They got swept. Mm-hmm. And, the Rangers, who couldn't win a game seemingly for 6 weeks, are suddenly sweeping a bunch of teams. They mopped the Blue Jays a couple weeks back. And, then they sweep the Mariners. I don't know what's going on with these West teams because it just doesn't seem like anybody actually wants to win it. And you throw the Blue Jays in there, and they don't seem to want to win it either. So it's going to be hilarious either way. And, of course, whichever team squeaks in there with the last spot that they don't seem to deserve, that team's going to win the pennant. And you just know how that's going to go. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they're going to go play Minnesota in Minnesota next week. And,
they're going to sweep them because Minnesota hasn't won a playoff game since 2004.
2004?
They've lost 18 in a row. How do you lose that many games in a row in the playoffs?
I mean, the Orioles have only lost 5 playoff games in a row.
Like their playoff losing streak is almost historic for a regular season losing streak, and they're a playoff team. And that's over how many years does that include? 6
20?
Or 7? No, but in terms of teams that actually made the playoffs, that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure it'll continue again because they are by far the worst playoff team in the American League. The Orioles made quick work of them when they
Oh.
played them this season.
Oh yeah, no, those two series weren't close. I think it was 2 out of 3 in a sweep for the O's.
Yep. All right, so let's do a little National League before we get to the pro football. All right, so all three divisions have been clinched. The Atlanta Braves, no shocker there. The Dodgers and the Brewers have all taken care of their divisions. I believe haven't had that one, at least in the West. I don't remember who you picked in the Central.
Yeah, told you all the Dodgers.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you told us the Dodgers. So the only team that's clinched a wild card spot is Philadelphia. They're likely to be the top seed. I think their magic number to clinch the 4 spot was 1. So they just got to win one more time or whatever, and they'll get that. So you've got 4 teams duking it out for 2 spots here, really. I mean, the Padres are alive, but only just. But you've got the Diamondbacks, the Cubs, the Marlins, and the Reds all squaring off right now. I think, from what I recall, the Diamondbacks currently hold the 5th spot, and I think the Cubs and the Marlins might be tied for the 6th spot. So we'll see how that plays out. The Reds are like a game and a half back, but still in the mix, and the Padres need literally everything to go their way for the last 5 games. So good luck with that.
I thought I saw the Padres' magic number was 1.
Yes.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the magic number column isn't on the MLB at that app anymore. But yeah, they're 4.5 back. They need to win all the games, and the teams they're playing need to lose all their games, and then probably something else has to happen too.
Yeah, it doesn't seem likely, especially when their closer refuses to go in the game when
Oh my
asked to
God.
pitch. That's
Yes.
don't get me wrong. We talk about it all the time. We support the players and their desire to get their money and stuff like that. But damn it, you're a professional baseball player. When you're called on to pitch, go pitch.
Yes.
Okay. This idea I'm going to sit out because he's asking me to get 4 outs instead of 3. What if I hurt my arm? I'm like, man, you could hurt your arm in a 3-out save just as easily. Stop being a baby. Show a little competitive fire, okay? I talked about this with Anthony Rendon, where
he has plenty of competitive fire. Did you see all those fights he was in to get suspended?
Yeah, picking fights with fans and stuff. Anthony Rendon gave away the game to me years ago when he was asked about if he was going to watch the All-Star game in a year that he thought, people thought that he might have been snubbed. And he responded, baseball's boring. I don't want to watch baseball. It's don't get me wrong. You are perfectly allowed to not enjoy watching baseball, but it tells me the guy doesn't have a love for the game. And, that you don't have to love your job, but I have a razor thin margin when giving somebody a market value contract. I'm not going to give it to a guy who I don't think is emotionally invested in the game, right? I got choices to make. You've just eliminated yourself from that choice. I'm not going to give you money because if you don't hit, I get fired, and you're much less likely to make it and get it done if I can't trust you to actually show a little care, right? It's about giving a damn. If it seems like you're just doing this because it's a money job and you're just in it for the bread, then I know you're not going to put in the work you need to do when you get hurt. Are you going to make sure you get back quickly? Are you going to rehab properly? Are you going to stay in shape? Are you going to keep your skills at top notch? Or are you going to get hurt and then start picking fights with people and act like an idiot and get lazy in the field?
I've never heard of a reliever refusing to go into the game when they're called upon, regardless of whether they need 3, 4, or 5 outs.
Relievers, especially a closer who's supposed to be one of the best in the league, those guys are supposed to be psychotic competitors. That is the requirement to be a closer. Is you have to be a guy who wants to get everybody out.
Also, it's not like 4-out saves are super rare. They happen. They happen several times this season.
And they're expected for a playoff closer. I realize they're not in the playoffs, but teams that are
they're
playoff
supposed
teams,
to be in the playoffs.
Those are the teams that are going to want Josh Hader next year. Or hey, we want this guy to anchor the back of our bullpen while we make our pennant run. Well, if the guy's I'm not going to go in the 8th. I get 3 outs. Was this Eric Bedard? You can only throw 90 pitches before you got to go sit down? You're going to be kidding me with this. That's just, it's so weak.
Yeah, lack of competitive fire sums it up pretty much. I mean, a lot of these guys, they want to play so bad, and they just pitch and pitch and pitch, and their armor is out and they're like, you know what, coach, I'll just pitch with the other arm. I got two. Just put me out there. They just want it so bad. And this guy to be like, well, it's it's only the bottom of the eighth inning or the top of the eighth inning and not the ninth. Like, really? Are you
And
kidding me?
it's also it's not like we're talking about some guy who's earned, $700,000 a year every year in the league. Josh Hader this year is making $14 million.
$14 million.
So, when the Padres ask you to pitch, go pitch.
Take the ball.
And it's not just weak sauce, Evan. It's level 1 weak sauce.
1 week sauce. Yes.
1 week sauce.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox now. How do we think this wild card picture is going to actually end up playing out? Do we think the Cubs are going to hold on because they're kind of choking too?
I mean, this is the problem with having so many playoff spots. Is like, are there really that many playoff worthy teams? Like, everybody can't choke. Like, somebody has to go to the playoffs. So, whichever team chokes the least looks to be going to the dance here. I mean, the Padres are done. I think the Reds are kind of done too. And the Diamondbacks are a game and a half up on Chicago.
They feel safe. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really between the Cubs, who've been described as anybody can have a bad century, and the Marlins, who have never won their division despite winning 2 World Series championships. So I don't know. No idea. I'll say the Cubs just because they're a game ahead right now.
Okay, so a quick update for those teams specifically. The Cincinnati Reds are currently down 4-3 to the Cleveland Guardians in the bottom of the 8th inning in Cleveland. So Orioles fans know how pesky Cleveland can be. They gave the Orioles a particularly annoying 4-game set that the Orioles were able to split. The Cubs currently lead the Braves 3-1, but it's the Braves, so they're pretty good and they could easily come back.
The Cubs had a 6-0 lead in Atlanta the other day, and they lost 7-6.
My point exactly. And then the Miami Marlins are in Queens playing the New York Mets. They are currently tied 1-1 in the bottom of the third. So that is your update on those teams. Let's move on to football.
The Rays are still at 5-0.
All right. Evan, do you want to start with your team blowing it, or should I start with my team blowing it?
I'll start with my team blowing it. Did my team blow it first, I guess?
I think my team blew it worse, but go ahead.
Okay. I mean, oh my God. So I only really saw the second half of the game because we were coming back from Hershey, but the Colts aren't good, right? The Ravens should have rolled them. Again, don't ask Coach Harbaugh about his team's execution. They couldn't get a first down late in the game. Like, you can't get 10 yards in 4 tries, really. And then, Isaiah Likely. Let's talk about you for a second, right? It was 3rd down. It's money time. I think it was overtime, right? To get a first down, you get in field goal range, you kick the ball, the game is over, and everybody can go home happy. But no, he's just going to have the ball bounce right off his chest plate and then onto the turf. So the Ravens had to punt the ball back to Indy, who then went on to kick a field goal and win instead. You've got to be kidding me. There were so many just lapses in judgment in terms of managing the clock when the Ravens had the ball. The Colts seemed to, have a big horseshoe stuck somewhere with all the little quirks and things. There were ill-timed penalties that stopped the clock inside of the 2-minute warning. Like it just, I mean, it wasn't even like a house of cards, but it was just the whole thing just disintegrated in like a perfect storm. It just, so we'll see what happens in Cleveland next Sunday. But jeez.
Yeah. I may have a modest hot take here. I don't think it's that hot of a take. As a non-Ravens fan, I think I can say this with some level of not sounding ridiculous because I'm not living too much in the moment here. I think Steve Bisciotti needs to be eyeballing this season very closely. I think he needs to have his antennas up, and if he doesn't see marked improvement of this team's execution, like vaulting into a level that they could consider themselves to be a legitimate threat to win the AFC, I think John Harbaugh needs to be fired because this is ridiculous. This is patently ridiculous, and going on a fourth straight season that this team's going to underachieve. Like, what else is there to say? I mean, you don't get that much rope. Like, they were about to fire the guy before Lamar saved his job. And
Yes.
then Lamar has the MVP season, and Harbs, I think he won Coach of the Year that year and probably deserved it.
Everybody won everything of the year that year, except, the big trophy.
Except the trophy that matters. And then since then, it's been one thing after another, whether it's, I know injuries have played a factor, but even when Lamar's been on the field for this team, it just feels like there's been something missing for a while now. It's just, there's a lack of execution. There's a lack of focus. There's just game management has been poor frequently. And at some point, you've got to get somebody in there that isn't going to marginalize the team. And right now, Harbaugh's been doing that for a while. And I can't sit back and say, it's not a big deal that one of the best quarterbacks in football plays for the Ravens for the first time ever. Like, they've never had a quarterback this good. And they just paid him a whole bunch of money. That investment says we need to strive to be a Super Bowl contender every year. And you have to ask the question at the very least, with the way things have gone for several years now, is Harbaugh still the guy that can maximize the level of that roster's potential and get them into that mix? And I'm not sure the answer is yes anymore.
I mean, Corey, you had your mouth open like you're about to say something. I mean, if Harbaugh leaves or gets fired or whatever, I would want a coach that's, also the guy who calls the plays and essentially is the offensive coordinator too. Because what keeps happening with the Ravens is one of the things that's happened in the last 15 years or so. The offensive coordinator keeps changing. There was Marty Mornhinweg and Greg Roman, and Mark Trestman was in there for some reason. He was terrible. Jim Caldwell, Cam Cameron, just a revolving door of these guys, like all under Harps. It's.
I mean, at some point you
it's
have to
just so
look at the common
frustrating.
denominator.
Yeah. It's just so frustrating. Like, why? Just doing the simple things, right? Just catch the ball. Just catch the ball, right?
Well, I'm not going to blame Harbaugh for the guy not catching the ball, but it just, again.
Well, I wish I could, but
But it feels like the coach bears responsibility for the team's level of execution, and
yes, 100%.
Ill-timed drop passes, bad penalties. It seems like your guys fumble the ball all the time. Like, I'm tired of seeing Ravens fumble the ball. Like,
Melvin Gordon will fix that.
We watched it. We were in the barn when y'all fumbled the ball at a time that made the game interesting when it shouldn't have been. And I'm just
against Cleveland.
Like, this is why the Ravens don't cover spreads. This is why they get struggle wins. This is why they lose games like this, is because of them doing stupid stuff, and it costs them key wins when it comes to seeding. It prevents them from winning their division. Right, like the AFC North right now, with the Bengals starting slow and with Burrow being hobbled,
it's
up for grabs, right? Like, and the Steelers don't look that great, right? Like, Kenny Pickett and that offense has struggled. Everybody wants Matt Canada to run out of town, right? Like, the Steelers are competitive, but they're not a great team. And the Browns have a great defense, but they just lost their star running back, and Deshaun Watson has been uneven at best at the quarterback position. Y'all have the best quarterback playing right now, given Joe Burrow's health.
Yes.
That means you guys should feel good about winning the division. And I can't imagine, as a Ravens fan, you feel good about winning the division right now.
Oh, no. It's it's looking ugly. Ravens at Steelers next week. So, even better.
All right. I guess it's my turn.
Well, what in the world happens? Like, this game was locked up.
It was until it wasn't. And the thing is, the easiest thing in the world to do when a team blows a lead is to say, hey, well, starting quarterback got knocked out of the game. But one, the backup quarterback is a former starter who started for a while and made a Pro Bowl appearance a long time ago. And he's also a guy that we all love.
Mm-hmm.
We love us some Jameis Winston on this
Yes.
podcast. And it should also be noted that Jameis Winston played pretty well. Like he didn't go in there and start slinging picks. Like he wasn't great. He wasn't lighting it up, but I don't think he was demonstrably worse than Derek Carr performed. Right? Like they moved the chains at times. The Saints can't run the ball right now. A big part of that is because they've got offensive line injuries. A big part of that is because they got no running backs. Right? Like Jamal Williams, they brought in the offseason. He's been hurt. He's going to miss a lot of time.
Yeah,
Alvin
they
Kamara
put
doesn't
him on
return until
IR.
this week.
Yep.
So there's a void at the running back position that could reasonably be fixed with Kamara's return, but that's not gonna Kamara doesn't block for himself. He still needs that, and of course you know how I feel about Dennis Allen as a coach, right? Like he sucks. So he's on the
Gotta
list.
put Taysom Hill in there, obviously.
I mean, so the Saints have just a long history of even when their defensive talent is good, even when their defensive stats are good, just phenomenally blowing games, not being able to get stops for an hour at a time. Just completely forget how to play defense. They let Jordan Love's offense go up and down the field with no Aaron Jones, no Christian Watson out there either. Like there's no excuse for a guy who I still like. Jordan Love's better than I thought he would be, given what we've seen from him prior, which is not much. But he's still not good, right? Like he's a game manager type quarterback. You shouldn't be blowing 17-point leads in the fourth quarter to that guy. That's just preposterous. And the fact that it happened and it cost the Saints a valuable win because everybody else in the division lost this week, right? Like the Carolina Panthers lost again. They lost to the Seahawks. The Buccaneers finally lost a game to the Eagles on Monday night, and the Falcons lost their first game of the year. I forget who they played, but they got beat pretty bad. So, like, you had an opportunity to get ahead in this division, which is not good, but you're not that good of a team either because you don't have a great quarterback anymore. Like, Drew Brees isn't walking through that door to save the day. And I wish that the Saints could be a little bit more of a program, to quote Nick Saban, that they were when Sean Payton was there. Yes, but they're not that anymore because they don't have the coaching to navigate the end of games or anything like that. And it's just it's a major headache to watch a team that has so many offensive weapons not be able to score more than it seems like 17 points, right? Like they struggle win against the Titans because they couldn't put up points. Struggle win against the Panthers because they only put up 20 points on them. And this week they scored 17, I think, in the first half, and then never scored again. Like, come on, man. Like, I know the defense should hold a 17-point lead, but it would be nice if y'all could at least pick up some first downs.
You got to win games on offense, right?
Yes.
Like, maybe if your defense is bad, but like possessing the ball helps the defense too. It limits the other team's ability to score. But if you keep going 3 and out and punting, and putting your defense back on the field again and again and again, that's how you lose. How about the Ravens in week 2 last year against the Dolphins? They didn't turn the ball over in that fourth quarter. They just couldn't get a first down.
Nope. I mean, you talk about the New England Patriots back in the Brady Belichick era, which, it's not that long ago. Those teams did not always have the greatest defensive personnel, but their defensive rankings were always good because they could always count on their offense to move the chains and put up points when they needed to. And, sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and the Saints don't have a good offense right now. Derek Carr is probably going to miss a little bit of time. He's week to week, which means we'll see him maybe never. And, Jameis Winston's going to –
Perryman was day to day.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we see him again, I don't really care. Jameis Winston's got to come in and, I know that the Saints don't like the idea of him coming in and being Jameis Winston and doing the stuff that drives coaches crazy where he, throws 30 picks a year, but the Saints need a little juice. They need a little juice, right? Like Derek Carr holds the ball too much. He's a statue in the pocket. He's too conservative. He doesn't pull the trigger. He seems to see ghosts sometimes. Jameis Winston doesn't see any ghosts. He just lets it rip. And for better or for worse, it'll be more fun. Right? Like throwing up heaves to Chris Olave, that'd be great. I can't wait to see it. I'm sure he'll sling 2 picks a game, but I'll appreciate it.
Playing the Bucks this week.
That's a big game. Who would have
Yeah.
thought? All right, so let's talk about one of our teams that actually won this week. Oh yes, Corey, your Lions beat the Falcons. How could I forget? How'd y'all pull that off? Because again, I didn't see much of this one because we were driving.
The defense just stepped up big time. Everybody had an effing sack. 6 different players for the Lions had sacks. Aiden Hutchinson had 2 of them. So we got to Desmond Ritter 7 times. They got to Jared Goff 0 times. No sacks given up by the Lions. Additionally, the leading yardage gainer for the Falcons, if you will, was Kyle Pitts with 41 yards.
Oh, I'm surprised he
4
got any
Lions
yards.
players had more yards than Kyle Pitts did. Jameer Gibbs with 80 rushing yards plus 2 receiving yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 102. Laporta had 84, and Khalif Raymond had 55. So, it was just kind of it was a dominant performance by the Lions that was not quite accurately reflected on the scoreboard. Only 2 touchdowns were scored in the game. They were both by the Lions, and thus the 14-point margin of victory. But this game, I would say, was a lot more in the Lions' favor than even that score would have suggested.
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw in the set, in fact, I didn't even actually see this because when I got home, it was the witching hour, and they never cut to the Lions-Falcons game. Like, there was no time spent on that game. I almost forgot about it. I was like, did that game just end an hour before everything else, or what? And there was just no attention paid to it. Obviously, we heard a little bit. Evan had the red zone on his phone, and so we pretty much heard, Aiden Hutchinson gets a sack, or something like that. It was pretty clear that the Falcons' offense was not moving the ball well at all. And yeah, the vibe I got from it, just from listening and again, no red zone action in the witching hour, was the Falcons were making absolutely no progress to make that a game. So even though it was only a 14-point win, it seemed like the Lions just took care of business and it wasn't really that competitive.
Yeah, it was nice to see Jameer Gibbs get a little more run this week. In week 2 with David Montgomery going out with the injury, the Lions didn't really use Jameer Gibbs all that much, but he got 17 carries, gained 80 yards on the ground. So that was really good. And the Lions defense also contained Bijan Robinson. Robinson had 4 catches for 27 yards. That's not that great as far as receiving goes. And they only had 33 rushing yards on 10 carries.
Yeah, it was much to the chagrin of my other fantasy team. He didn't have much of a day, but yeah, good for the Lions. 2-1 after a tough loss against a pretty tough team in the Seahawks last week, but still in a good spot. I mean, the Bears are 0-3, so they were never really a contender. The Vikings are 0-3, and the Packers, I believe, are 2-1. But I would say through 3 weeks, the Lions have looked like the better team compared to the Packers. Not by a ton, because the Packers have looked all right, but I have to feel okay about where the Lions are right now.
Kirk Cousins is on pace for over 6,000 passing yards, 61 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and an 0-17 record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no team can play any defense.
They also have a major fumbling issue across the entire team.
They have 7 lost fumbles so far this year. They had 8 all of last season. They could have 9 lost fumbles right now, except that 2 fumbles by Alexander Mattison were somehow discounted. One of them definitely should not have been because his forward progress had not been stopped for more than half a second before the ball came out.
Well, let me ask you this. Have they recovered any of their own fumbles this year?
More fumbles.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
How many fumbles do they have? If they
a lot.
Lost,
at least 7.
You said
through 3
7?
weeks.
They lost 7. They probably fumbled or just, gotten picked up 7 more. How? Oh my goodness.
Well, that's why I ask though, is because my follow-up question would be, how much of this, obviously fumbling the ball 7 times in 3 weeks is bad, but if you failed to recover all 7, some of that's bad luck. Like that's the type of stuff that could turn in your favor. But if it's like they fumbled
Sure.
14 and they've recovered half of them, well, now you got a huge problem, right?
I
Like,
think
and
7 in 3 games is a huge problem.
So
14
now
would
you've
just
got a
be
huge problem.
everybody's
No.
cut.
14 would
Which-
be shocking.
To be fair, Kevin O'Connell basically said we're going to be putting some other people in the games if this continues to be an issue.
I'm glad I don't have any Vikings running backs, or I would still take Justin Jefferson because he's not going anywhere. But
He got a fumble too, didn't he?
yes, he did. He fumbled it out of the back of the end zone, and every sports writer got on their soapbox again about how it's the dumbest rule in sports. And yet, despite being the dumbest rule in the history of sports, the NFL never even considers changing the rule. Maybe it's not as dumb as y'all think.
I am curious. The fumble through the end zone, obviously it changes possession. Is that counted as a fumble lost on the stat sheet? Because that could
Yeah,
be their
should
8th
be.
fumble right there.
It absolutely is. It's considered a fumble loss. Yeah.
They
Okay.
fumbled the ball and the other team takes over. That sounds like a lost fumble to me.
Yep, it is. Yeah, the reason, but I know Football Outsiders used to track, lost fumbles versus kept fumbles, at least for individual players. But so I'm sure Shots has all that information, but he's operating in a different space now, so I'm not sure if he's made that information public like he does everything else. But yeah, that's no good for the Vikings, and so they found a way to lose to the Chargers,
Who tried to lose?
that's what this game was going to be always. It was going to be who's going to mess this up, not worst, but last. Like, who's going to make the last mistake? And the answer was the Vikings because, so my guy, Brandon Staley,
You boy.
decided, my boy, yeah, he decides to go for it on what, fourth and a long one, at
Mhm.
their own 24 or something like that to try to ice the game.
Weren't they
and-
inside of the 2-minute warning and the Vikings had no timeouts?
Yeah, there was they punt the ball away. The Vikings offense hadn't really done a whole lot. They could have realistically gotten a stop. Instead, they go for it, and the justification was, well, the analytics say, the computer says, you go for it, there's an 89% chance you win. If you punt, it's only 82. And Evan, you are a regular listener to the Bill Simmons podcast. I'm sure you heard what Bill had to say about this with Cousin Sal.
I haven't.
Those-
yet, actually.
Okay, well,
Little
spoiler
behind.
alert. Those metrics don't account for team quality. They don't account for what has been happening throughout the entirety of the game. And most importantly, they don't account for the quality of the play you called. Right? That expectation is based off of, people running a smart play. Like
Mhm.
maybe putting the ball in your best player's hand. Like, say, your quarterback that's thrown for 470
Just push
yards
it with
with Herbert.
Herbert, who's gigantic.
And athletic. And even if you don't do that, put the ball in his hands. Make him a factor in the play
Did they
because
just
he's
call a dive up the
yeah.
middle?
It was a handoff, and it was you don't have Austin Eckler out there. You don't even have your best running back on the field, and you're handing the ball off. Give the ball to Herbert and let him make the play. Like
Mhm.
that play is going to probably work. The one you ran was definitely not going to work, and that's the one they decided to do. And everybody saw it coming, and it got stuffed. And then the Vikings turn around, and Cousins completes a pass to inside the 10 with 40 seconds left, and they run up to the line of scrimmage. They don't spike it, and then they mill around and have to rush a play because they've let 25 seconds run off the clock. And Cousins throws a quick pass that gets deflected by his receiver and ends up getting picked, and they lose the game.
Just an
I'm like-
absolutely abysmal sequence.
Yeah, the thing is, yes, that theoretically could have happened if they had spiked the ball and just, called a play. But normally things like that don't happen when you come from a settled position. When you're playing a situation where it's like, oh, we got to hurry up because we're wasting a bunch of time, and
If it's a fire drill out there.
yeah, it's so erratic, and nobody knows what's going on. This is the type of thing that happens. Like, you remember the play that the Steelers had against the Patriots after what was that, Jesse James non-catch play, where it was in Heinz Field at the time, and Jesse James caught a touchdown pass, but he ruled to not have control of it going to the ground, and they were running out of time because they wasted a whole bunch of time before that. So Ben had to run this ridiculous quick passing play that got deflected and picked, and it cost them the game when they could have kicked a field goal to at least tie it.
I remember
And
that. That was 2018.
yes,
The Ravens won the
2017.
division that year, not really on their own merits, but like the Steelers
No.
blew it.
It was 2017 that happened, but it cost the Steelers seeding, and so they had to go.
Really?
They had to play Jacksonville in at Heinz Field in the second round. They lost to Blake Bortles. The Patriots got to have the 1 seed,
Hmm.
but that was that year. Yeah,
Oh,
I
17?
remember. It was 17. Yes,
Oh.
I promise you, it was 17. But yeah, like I don't know. The Steelers beat the Patriots in 18, but they blew a game to the Saints in the Dome. That was great. Anyway, yeah, like when you're rushing a play, mistakes are more likely to happen, and that's exactly what happened here. And that they, even if that ball falls harmlessly incomplete, you've left yourself 7 seconds to run maybe 3 plays. What's wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you?
3 plays in
Like,
7 seconds is pretty generous.
Yeah, ain't happening. And Cousins has been in the league for what? This is his 12th season in the NFL.
It was a rookie in 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, so you should know better. You're supposed to be a veteran leader. You've had 3 gigantic contracts that you didn't deserve. Maybe live up to them for 1 moment, like a 2-minute drill where you don't let all the time tick away.
Well, I mean, he was too busy taking a knee when he was supposed to spike it that one time.
That was a long time ago.
I rooted
But
for
yes.
that team when that happened, so that still hurts, even though they actually won that game.
The Rays won 5-0. That's fine.
Okay, no surprise there. So yeah, the Chargers, Vikings fire both teams into the sun. Just useless squads, and I can't stand them. Let's speak of another useless squad who played a team that was fun. The Denver Broncos gave up 10 touchdowns.
Yikes.
That's so good.
First time since the 60s that a team has scored 70 points.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore. That's some Madden cheese right there. So
Mhm.
I don't know what to say about the Broncos. I don't care to say much about them. So let's focus on the Dolphins because we like them. They're fun. Yeah, 4 touchdowns apiece for the 2 running backs that the Dolphins primarily used, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. Achane, to be clear, not Achane. Yeah, they made up 8 of the 10 touchdowns, and Tua threw 2 touchdowns with his left hand and 2 with his right hand because he did a couple nifty little shovel passes. It was awesome. There was a decimation. We were watching in real time on my phone because I have the Broncos defense in fantasy, but I smartly did not start them. I started I wasn't going to be stupid enough to do that. And they were marching towards some type of history. They were down around like minus 22 points, but in garbage time, they returned a kickoff for a touchdown to kind of give themselves like 6 free points, but they still ended up at like minus 20. I think it ended up being like 19.9 and change or something like that. Just a ridiculous, piss poor performance from a defense that is supposed to be good, right? Like last year, remember how we always talked about if they could just score like more than 17 points a game, they'd win almost all their games. Well,
they scored more than 17 this time.
That they did, and they lost by 50. So times have changed.
Yeah. Giving up 70 points. I mean, wow. Didn't the R words play the Bears in like an NFL championship and was 73-0 or something?
Yes.
Like the 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just absurd. The boy Sean Payton, Eric, like, that's a yikes. Mr. Unlimited.
Mr. Very Limited. Mr. Extremely
yikes.
Limited.
Mr. Limited was the only guy on Corey's team that didn't absolutely kill me this week. Like everybody else went off. Raheem Mostert had like 40-something points. Russell Wilson had 13.
I was just hoping for 15. I had to
You got
start him
close.
in place of Joe Burrow because I didn't know what was going to happen on the late game for Monday night. I was perfectly happy with getting almost 15 from Russell Wilson.
Well, especially because you beat my ass senseless, so it didn't really matter anyway. But,
I did. I beat you by like 60 points. I beat you by
yeah,
more than the Dolphins beat the Broncos.
fantasy football makes more sense, but ugly week for me. Again, it was another situation where I got home and we were on the road. I checked my phone, right before we left, and I was getting crushed. And then I got in the house and I was getting crushed by even more. And then I went to put my clothes away, and suddenly I was down by 20 more points than I was down before. It just kept stacking up. And I was just like, okay, this isn't my week. It's not happening. But
I was getting very annoyed early in that game because the first two rushing touchdowns went to Achan. And I'm like, use Mostert. Why aren't you using Mostert? And then he scored 4 straight touchdowns. I was like, okay, we're good now. And then Achan added
yeah,
2
we're
more.
good now. Yeah.
You can't tell me it's pronounced Achan. Are you kidding me? That sounds made up. I mean, I guess all names are made up at the end of the day, but really?
First of all,
From his mouth, he said so.
I guess.
First of all, I don't once again, extremely poorly worded tweet from Adam Schefter.
He
What's
needs
new?
help.
That's what he does. How are you going to say, following his great performance, he has informed the Dolphins media personnel that he would like it to be pronounced Achan going forward. No, he probably said, it's pronounced Achan. Stop calling me by the wrong last name.
He was a star in college, and he was Devon Achan the whole time.
It's like a Zach Britton thing.
There was only 102,000 people at every single one of those Texas A&M games. You couldn't say anything then. What happens?
Well, maybe he feels like it's more like a. Remember when it was it Jason Oweh? He became Odafe Oweh.
Oh,
your Ravens, yeah, where he said, "Yeah, I'm going to use my actual name instead of." I don't know.
It could also be something where if people just kept insisting on mispronouncing his name, he just gave up on saying anything. But now that he scored 4 touchdowns, he's like, all right, I think I've earned a little bit of respect here. Start calling me by the right name.
Well, if he's going to get mean tweets or videos about how he didn't score at all this week in fantasy because now everybody's putting him in the starting lineup, he's like, at least get my name right when you say mean stuff to me. Get that part correct.
Well, let's not forget his teammate Jalen Waddell, or whatever you want to be called.
I'm pretty sure that based on his touchdown celebration, it is in fact pronounced Waddle.
He's trying to convince people it's Waddell. That's
trying
not
to
how
sound
the English
fancy.
Language works.
He's trying to sound classy. I don't know.
Sound ridiculous.
The thing about classy is it's a state of mind.
Oh, well, I do want to point out.
Classy.
So back in 2011, Georgia Tech beat Kansas 66-24. I remember because I was there. Tech got, I believe, 768 yards that day. The Dolphins this past Sunday got 726 yards, which is, just madness.
This is a professional football game. This isn't supposed to happen. What's going on?
This was bad Kansas, right?
Doesn't matter what. I get it in a college football game, but in an NFL game, where was Vance Joseph? He's having the time of his life, coaching the Broncos to giving up 10 touchdowns. What's going on here?
40% of a mile. My goodness gracious!
I also enjoyed
How many
that.
miles did you give up today on defense? That's what I'm wondering.
I also enjoyed that Tua threw half of his touchdown passes right-handed, and he didn't throw 2 touchdown passes. He threw 4.
Yeah. Oh, good for him. Yeah. Eat your heart out, Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
He's only thrown left-handed for a little first down, right? These are tutters. What's that about? So anyway, that game was hilarious. Is Sean Payton a one-and-done coach? I don't think so because they owe him too much money. But
it's Nat Hackett PI's fault, obviously.
Worst coaching job in NFL history. But I've mentioned this before. He has put such a target on his back for his antics before the season, his antics to start the season, going for an onside kick on the opening kickoff of the game. right? Like when you do that and your team is not only losing but losing spectacularly, like that's how you end up back in the studio, right? Like that's
Mhm.
like Urban Meyer land type stuff, right? Like
Oh,
I
jeez.
assume he's not doing all the crazy stuff that Urban Meyer was doing at practice or in some bar somewhere, but it's that level of attention that leads to such a level of humiliation for you as a coach that you just can't be taken seriously anymore, and you get dog walked out of there really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, got to tighten it up, and then once you're winning, you can run your mouth after that.
Yeah, it's like you walked in there thinking, well, I won a Super Bowl eons ago,
Hmm.
and I'm probably going to the Hall of Fame. But isn't it interesting though that we've had two guys who had probably significant egos, who had a lot of people backing them as this guy rules and whatever, and then they both go to Denver, one last year, one this year, and are potentially completely throwing away their entire legacies. Like let's be real, Russell Wilson, we talked about it last year. He's blown it in Denver. Like
Oh,
this
yeah.
this has been destructive to his claim as a Hall of Famer. And while I think Sean Payton has a little bit more runway there because he won a lot of games as a coach over a longer period, and he won a Super Bowl for the New Orleans Saints of all teams,
Hmm.
it's still damning, dude. Like that's a rough look.
These games count too.
These games count, and we can point to you specifically as doing a bad job coaching the team, right? Like this isn't some awful situation that nobody could help. You signed up for this, talk smack about the previous guy, and you're currently doing a worse job.
How does
At
that
least
even
last year, the
happen?
defense was consistently great.
I don't know. It's insanity.
70 points.
All right, before we get to our picks, a little bit of unfortunate news.
Oh, no. What happened?
Well, Mike Williams with a torn ACL.
Oh,
He's obviously out for the year.
Yep.
Fortunately, that seems to be the only major injury this week. Hopefully, we will have better health news going forward, which means preferably no news on that front. So let's get to a little bit of our picks last week and talk about things we did right and wrong and things like that. Let's start with our biggest regret because that's always the funnest one. Evan doesn't have anything written down, but we'll save you for last, I
you
guess.
need to refresh your
Evan
thing.
does have something written down.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. My internet's a little sluggish. All right. Anyway, I'll start with Corey. You have written down Manders with an S, not a Z, versus Bills. You had them covering their 6.5 point spread, and that didn't come close to happening.
No, it did not. I should have known better. I know that the
Yeah.
Commanders are not good.
Yeah.
I had them winning a grand total of 5 games this season.
Mm-hmm.
They'd already won 2. So, I don't know. I guess I underestimated the Bills, and I greatly and woefully overestimated the Manders. So I definitely regret that one.
Okay, I get it. My regret, and it's the same as Evans, is the New York Jets over the Patriots, namely because Zach Wilson. And I mean, come on,
Don't forget
he,
Zach Wilson.
he's horrendous. I don't know. I pushed back Corey when you said last week that Mac Jones was not, necessarily measurably better than Zach Wilson, and yet I picked as if what you said I agreed with. Like I should have said, okay, no, Mac is better. Mac's not good, but Mac's better than this clown, and I was right. And the Jets are heinous. Zach Wilson is a joke. I don't know how the Jets can continue to play him. Like I just don't. Like he's got to be benched and jettisoned for somebody, anybody. They'll put
There's
Colin
White
Kaepernick
Mike
out
White.
there. I don't know. It's just it's a joke, and I should have known better.
Yeah, I should have known better too. I also picked the Jets against the Cowboys in week 2.
Double
Somehow
down.
didn't learn my lesson. That was stupid. So I'm out on the Jets. I'm done. I'm so tired of the Jets. Like the Jets had earned a place on the list of teams I hate, and they're just gonna stay, right? Because they're all talk and no substance, just nothing. So Zach Wilson has to be the worst quarterback in the league. So they're trying to win games on defense only, and say you go through a game giving up 0 points, you're still not going to win because Zach Wilson can't score anything for you. He's probably going to score points for the other team. So the Jets on offense are just an unserious football team, right? Like they went through all this stuff with Zach Wilson last year, trying to replace him because he was terrible. They spent a whole bunch of money in draft capital to bring Aaron Rodgers in there, and Rodgers only plays 4 plays, and they're like, oh, well, we jumped through all these hoops to get rid of Zach Wilson. Our backup quarterback should be Zach Wilson. Yeah, that's going to go over well. Oh boy. I know I say this a lot, but this is an unmitigated disaster. It really is.
I find it funny, Evan, that all offseason you were the waving the pessimistic flag for the Jets and just saying that this team's going to be a mess. And yet you've back-to-back weeks you picked them in the picks, and it's just blown up in your face. So
catastrophically.
So maybe don't do that anymore. But apparently there's some drastic discontent in that Jets locker room over Zach Wilson continuing to start. People are blaming Robert Saleh for,
He's the head coach.
Yes, seemingly.
Who's their backup quarterback now? Who's that guy?
I don't know. They brought in Trevor Siemian.
Okay. Well,
I mean, he's not very good, but you're not going to find somebody maybe they need to do what people have suggested and just tell the Vikings, hey, y'all are 0-3. It's over. Kick Kirk Cousins our way. We might be able to actually win some games with him. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. I mean, Kirk Cousins usually doesn't lose you games, right? Like Zach Wilson's actively losing them games, despite the fact that they won a game.
Kirk has proven that he can lead a functioning offense, especially one with at least one good playmaker on it in Garrett Wilson. And they've got a good defense. If they had Kirk Cousins, they would be a competitive team. All right. So let's move on to our proudest pick, which, unless I need to refresh again, Corey, you don't have anything listed.
No, I don't. And that's because I didn't really feel like I had any one game that I really nailed. Obviously, I got some games right. I didn't get either of my lone wolf picks right. And even the ones that I did get right, I didn't feel like there was one that I knew and was correct in the way that it was going to happen that wasn't something that was common for all of us.
Yeah.
That wasn't obvious to
Like
literally anybody.
I didn't make any, brilliant discoveries over here. Ugh.
I mean, I could have written down Eagles over Bucks because I think I lone wolfed that one and I got it right. But honestly, I don't think I'm that proud of saying I think the actual Eagles defense is going to show up this week versus the previous two where they hadn't played well. I didn't really take that much pride in that because it could have easily just been, hey, the Eagles are still slacking and they don't win or they don't cover the spread. But I went with Colts over Ravens just because, again, the Ravens are just so untrustworthy, and I knew that they wouldn't be reliable in this game. I thought that Gardner Minshew would give them a good chance to win, the Colts, that is, and he did. So I wrote that one down. I'm not super proud of it, but I figured I had to write something.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably have been the one that I would have gone with if I picked any of them. But again, I mean, I felt like that was such a slam dunk pick from the start. I mean, -7.5, really? There's a reason that all three of us easily said Colts.
Was that game in Baltimore or in
Baltimore at the bank?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
What happened? There's no excuses.
I sat there and watched the Ravens play the Browns in the bank with you, and I watched them. I presume they didn't cover the spread that day either because they were loafing around. That's what the Ravens did.
They needed a miracle not to lose. Like Calais Campbell blocked a field goal that would have flipped the outcome.
Yep. Well, we're all unanimous on what was the most surprising outcome. The Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys?
Cowboys losing to the Cardinals, not just failing to cover their 12.5-point spread, but outright losing, and I think they lost by 2 touchdowns.
They lost by a lot.
They got rolled, man. They couldn't stop the run. Josh Dobbs was successful throwing the ball against them. Dak Prescott threw a pick into triple coverage late in the game, which is just wonderful for my fantasy teams.
What?
Yeah, it
Well,
just
I need to interrupt. Orioles just won,
yes, they
but
did.
the Rays won earlier. So are we going to the game tomorrow night?
I can't.
Oh, okay.
You should go. I've been to a
ticket
Clinchmas.
app open right now. Like it's
Like I said, I've been to a Clinchmas. I'd love to go again, but I got things going on tomorrow. And I can't go Friday either. So something just happened. Somebody made a noise. Anyway, Cowboys lost. What the hell? Some people are suggesting maybe the team was a little shook after Trayvon Diggs tore his ACL in practice. It sounds like a big excuse to me. I understand that sometimes these things happen during the NFL season where you kind of overlook an opponent and they come out and smack you in the face. But this was the first game that the Cowboys played against a team that has been even a little bit scrappy this year. And they got punched in the mouth, right? Like the Giants laid down for them. The Jets were hapless. This Cardinals team has been in every game they've played. Now, granted, the first 2 weeks they were playing teams that we don't consider particularly good, like the Washington Commanders, like the Giants. But, we pegged them as the decisive, y'all are going to get Caleb Williams. And based on what we've seen, even before this win, I was like, I don't think that's the case anymore. And just adding a win to the column puts them further away from that. I think this team's going to win a few more games. Like they look spunky.
I'm very interested to see what ultimately happens with Kyler Murray if he's going to come back, because this team, like you said, they're scrappy. In week 2 against the Giants, obviously a team that we thought was going to be significantly worse than the Cowboys, the Cardinals took off in the first half and then just completely shot themselves in the foot in the second half and allowed the Giants to come back into the game and win it. They got off to another hot start against the Cowboys. And then it seemed like the Cowboys just forgot that the Cardinals want to lose. They want to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. And they just never even attempted to come back in the second half. I get that Trayvon Diggs lost for the season in practice last week, but one player should not make that big of a difference to what was supposed to be a dominant defense playing against, even if they're more scrappy than we expected them to be, a bad Cardinals team.
Yeah, I feel like we should give a little bit of credit to is it Jonathan Gannon? Is that his first name? Is it Jonathan or does he just go by John? I don't know.
no idea.
The
Is
former
he the Cardinals coach this week?
Well, he is the Cardinals coach.
Oh, okay. Well, they've been through a lot of them.
Yes. Yeah, he was hired in the offseason after an abysmal Super Bowl performance by his defense with the Eagles.
Cost me
And
$2.
I told you not to do that. Anyway, whenever you see a guy who is a defensive-minded coach get hired after probably the worst performance of his career, you just kind of wonder, especially after what we saw happen to Matt Patricia in the same circumstances. You're just like, I don't know if this guy's the guy. But, obviously there's, we don't know he's the guy yet, but he's got that team playing a lot harder. Like, Drew made fun of him, and I kind of agreed with it. He had like a pregame, rah-rah speech that absolutely sucked. Like it was lifeless. There was no energy there, and I just was like, nobody's running through a brick wall for you. And then I sent Drew like a contrasting video of Coach Prime pumping up the Buffs, and he was like, "Yeah, that's a speech right there." And he was like, "Yeah, that's way better than this loser." And then now the Cardinals
ran through the Buffs.
Yeah, the Cardinals look kind of, like they're overachieving a little bit, which you got to give some credit to the coach for instilling some level of competitiveness and belief into that team.
I mean, every player on the Cardinals is an NFL player, right? Like,
that is true.
That is true. They're
Actually,
collecting checks too.
Yes.
So
Your
you
boy
would expect them
Isaiah
to play
Simmons
hard.
is there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, haven't heard from him on the Giants. What Giants defense?
We thought that was a big deal. Him and Wink Martindale, that was supposed to be game changing.
It should be game changing. It's just not there, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. But I mean, this is unacceptable out of Dallas, right? Like, there needs to be torches and pitchforks and stuff. Like, how do you lose to the Cardinals? The Cardinals are the worst team ever in the history of the NFL, right? They're just terrible since day one. And we thought the Cubs could have a bad century. The Cardinals would like a word as well. It's just like the Cardinals have no team, right? They have no team. There's nobody there.
Josh
Nobody.
Dobbs is kind of balling a little bit, though.
Josh Dobbs is playing well. Rondale Moore is playing pretty well. James Conner's been very good again.
I mean, these aren't Larry Fitzgerald and that level of talent, right? Like what?
Well,
Well,
no,
very few
but
people are.
You are.
Yeah.
I don't need Larry Fitzgerald to win a couple football games a year.
I mean, yeah, the Cardinals have nothing, and this is, unacceptable out of Dallas, really. Like, you couldn't beat them.
I agree. It's a
Seriously?
big.
You got waxed.
It's a major point of concern. I'm interested to see how they bounce back against another bad team in the New England Patriots this week. If they have a similarly sluggish performance, even if they win, it feels like they need if they can bounce back and say, all right, we're putting that behind us. It's the NFL. Sometimes you get waffled type of thing, but we're the Dallas Cowboys and we're for real. And they come out and they beat the Patriots' asses. Then I'll be like, okay, maybe I'm back, to believing in them as a Super Bowl team. But the last impression they made was against the Cardinals, and you can't lose by 2 tutters to the Cardinals and make me think you're winning anything this year.
Did the Cowboys have anybody on the schedule who's good? Right?
I mean, they've got to play
opened up
Philly
with
twice.
Giants, Jets, Cardinals, Patriots. Like, I don't think. I mean, those teams might not have to worry about making the playoffs.
Probably not. I think we spent a little too much time on this game, so let's move on to Evan,
Dallas
you said,
Dallas versus San Francisco next Sunday night on NBC.
Yes, indeed. I don't see best and worst in here.
I think it's way down there.
They're
isn't it?
there.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's all
okay.
the way
No,
down.
I see.
Right?
Here we go. Okay. So let's do that first, and then we'll get to our eliminated team thing, and then we'll get to our picks. So best and worst for the week. No surprise here. The best quarterback of the week was Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he's had several very strong weeks so far. This one was probably his best. He didn't turn the ball over. 256 DYAR, excellent performance. Certainly the front runner for MVP 3 weeks in, which means absolutely nothing. The worst quarterback of the week was Sam Howell. He got sacked, I believe, 6 times. He threw 4 interceptions. He might have grasped a couple of balls too. Minus a negative 262 DYAR, an
He
absolute
was
stinker.
worse than Tua was good.
Yeah,
That's
like with replacement
Wow.
level as the baseline. So that's
Right.
that's
Tua
a feat.
was great.
Yes, that was an absolute feat by Sam
Tua
Howell.
was
to be that bad.
historic.
Yeah, he was more detrimental to his team than Tua was beneficial to his.
Again, as a replacement level baseline, imagine if the baseline was an average quarterback. It would be way worse.
Oh,
All right, so running backs, hilarious. I hope that Aaron Schatz did a little write-up on this to talk about, like, maybe if this was historic. The number one running back by total DYAR was Devon Achane, and second place was his teammate Raheem Mostert.
He did mention in quick reads, this is the first time ever, at least as far as the seasons that he has gathered data for, that 2 running backs from the same team in the same week both had more than 80 DYAR. They both had more than 90.
Yeah.
how do you even do that? Like, if one running back does that well, the game is over, right? You just, kneel down, basically.
And then you consider that the quarterback threw 4 touchdown passes.
Yeah, but 2 of them were
To
to
these guys.
yeah.
Yeah,
So that
but you
helps.
also had other receivers that were involved, including Tyreek Hill, who had a big game of his own right.
Yes, he did. No Jalen Waddle, much to my chagrin. But yeah, I remember back in 2017, everybody was making a big deal out of the fact that Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram were 2 teammates who both made the Pro Bowl, and obviously we're a long way off from that for these 2 young men. But I mean, this type of performance is what leads to that type of thing happening. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, how they handle the workload, because Raheem Mostert has been a very good running back wherever he's been basically since the 49ers discovered him back in 2019, he's got wheels for days. Like you can't teach speed. And so his presence is always going to be valuable, especially for a team that just overwhelms you with speed. And Devon Achane is also very fast, and they're both very capable of doing exactly what they did. I mean, you could have a two-headed monster the whole season that plays really well. I'm not expecting them to do this every week because they're not going to have the luxury of playing the friggin' Broncos, but this was awesome.
It'll be interesting to see whenever Jeff Wilson gets healthy, if he gets healthy, where he's going to fit into this backfield. Because he's also very talented and very fast when he's healthy.
Yep. But for now, they've got two guys holding it down, so they'll worry about that when they have to. The worst running back of the week, Breece Hall. I have him in both of my leagues, so this is going great. Negative 38.
Not to draft him.
I mean, I got him real late. Like he's not supposed to be in my starting lineup. I've just had a lot of injuries. But he's not in my starting lineup this week because Kamara's coming back in the other league. So thank God for that. But he had a negative 38 DYAR. I'm mixing my metaphors there a little bit. Rushing only, it's the same three guys, Achane and Mostert, 83 and 51 apiece, and Breece Hall worst with minus 39 DYAR. So at least he was 1 yard above replacement in the passing game. Good for him. Real nice job. While catching passes from Zach Wilson, no less. All right. Pass catchers. Amari Cooper led the way. 72 DYAR for the Browns. And T. Higgins was the worst of the week. Almost cost Steven the win. Minus 35 DYAR for him. So
the second time in 3 weeks that T. Higgins has been the worst pass catcher by DYAR because he had the 0 for 8 week 1.
The only team he's done anything against was mine, where he went off in week 2. So, great.
Amari Cooper's DYAR should be higher than that, by the way. That should have been if not a touchdown, because there was a defender further down the field that maybe could have stopped him. But Amari Cooper had a play that he was clearly not out of bounds. Like, barely even crossed the hash marks along the sideline, much less actually hit the boundary. And the referee just blew it dead for no reason. He should have had a lot more yardage, potentially a touchdown that could have skyrocketed that DYAR.
I mean, he still made a big play, so that helps. All right, let's do our eliminated team. Somehow y'all let me end up winning the picks this week, and I don't know what's going on there. So I guess I get to pick first. Yeah, so did I. So did all of us. We all messed that one up. I'm not used to having to pick first, so I could pull a Nolan and trade the pick, but I'm not going to.
Oh yeah.
Total chump move. Yeah. Let's get this one on the board. I'm going to eliminate the Denver Broncos. 100% toast. Like that's easy.
Yeah. There were the other team I wrote down since I'm picking second. But the team I want to eliminate first is the Bears.
Yeah, also an easy choice.
They're done.
So, to catch you guys up, I've eliminated the Rams, the Panthers, the Texans, and the Broncos. It's funny, after week 3, like I was worried about the Rams originally, but they've kind of regressed. But now I'm kind of worried about the Texans because they're looking pretty frisky.
Also, the Jags stink.
Yes.
I also might be just a little bit worried about the Panthers just because that division is very winnable. The Panthers shouldn't win it, but somebody has to.
Yeah, but they're also
last year at 6-10-1 or something.
Well, the Bucks won it at 8-9 last year. But no, the Panthers are at least 0-3 though, right? They've got 3 losses on the board already. So I'm feeling better about that pick. But the Texans, CJ Stroud playing well. I mean, I know the Texans are 1-2, but they've looked good the last 2 weeks. Okay, Evan has eliminated the Colts. They just beat your team. I think they're 2-1. The Cardinals, the Panthers, and now the Bears. I think the only team there that should feel super safe is the Bears. And Corey, who you got?
So to go along with the Cardinals, the Titans, and the Bears, who I've eliminated in the past 3 weeks, I am going to eliminate the team that I eliminated first last year and later regretted, the New York Giants.
Oh, I was gonna say the Eagles.
That was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago, and I also regretted
you
that.
also regretted that one. Oh man. Okay,
Which
so
is
that
why I'm
does it
nervous
for
about the
our-
Cardinals.
All right, so that does it for our eliminated team. So let's get on to week four's picks. And this season's every year just flies by.
Mhm.
So I don't see any picks laid in here. Do I need to refresh again or what?
I haven't put anything in.
No, nobody's put
and,
any in yet.
Mine's blank as well.
Okay, cool. So we're all on the same page, literally, because we're all looking at the same page. Thursday night football.
Yes.
The Lions are 1.5-point favorites at the Packers. Corey, this is your team, so I'm going to give you the honors of going first. Who you got?
I've got the Lions. This is maybe partially a homer pick, but also fading the pack. Last week, fading the pack actually worked. They beat your Saints, but the Saints still covered the -2 line.
They did. That is true. I forgot to mention the Saints did actually cover the spread.
Yeah.
Saints
So
+2 then.
the Packers still not beating the spread. The Lions are playing pretty well. I think that they're probably a little more even than this would suggest. Honestly, the Packers could be favored by 3 in this game. I probably wouldn't quite put it that far. I'd probably go Packers -1.5, -2. But even with the Lions laying points, I'm gonna homer out on them tomorrow night.
It's the Lions for me, for all the reasons Corey said. I guess except for the homerism part. I think they're the better club.
The Packers have only fared well one game this year against the spread, and that was against the Bears. So that means nothing to me. The Lions are, I think, a better team. So yeah, I'm rolling with the Lions. All right, we've got a London game this week, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The Falcons are quote unquote at the Jaguars. The Jaguars might actually have a little home field advantage there because they're there so often that the Brits seem to like them. But anyway, the Jaguars are favored by 3 points in the quote unquote neutral site game. All right, Evan, you go first this time.
Oh, I mean, I have no idea, man.
That's why I asked you first. I think this is gonna
Oh,
be great.
okay. I don't even have a coin in here to flip. Ooh, and the 3. I don't want to pick the Falcons, but I don't want to pick the Jags either.
It's the exercise.
It's the exercise. Jacksonville, I'm sorry, Jacksonville, you're going to lose, but I'm picking y'all this week.
All right, I guess I'll go next. I think that Trevor Lawrence has played better than his stat line indicates. I think he hasn't had the best help, but he's going to have the same help this week. The Falcons stink. Like, let's be real, they're not a very good 2-1 team. And the Jags play well in London. I think this is a get right game for them, and I think they cover. So I'm going with Jags.
That's exactly the way I was going to put it, Eric. I feel like this is a get-right game for the Jaguars. I don't know that I necessarily agree completely that Trevor Lawrence has played better than his stat line would indicate. I think that Trevor Lawrence has been kind of bad to start this year, to be honest.
Let me be clear. He hasn't played well, but his stat line is horrifying. So,
Yeah,
fair. like
Urban
like,
Meyer, horrifying. His rookie year.
not quite that bad. That was something else. But
it's pretty
but like
bad.
I think his performance has been good enough to believe he's gonna get better, right? Like he hasn't been just complete trash.
Yeah, and he's got good weapons. I mean, Calvin Ridley has been kind of since week 1, but he can bounce back for sure. Christian
And he's
Kirk,
getting open, yeah. Like
yeah,
just
Christian
need to
Kirk
find
has had back-to-back good games after being irrelevant in week 1. Zay Jones was great in week 1. He hasn't done much since then, but clearly he is pretty good. And probably the most consistent tight end so far this season has been Evan Ingram. Like he hasn't been amazing, but he's been solid, consistent. So I like the Jags' chances in this game. I have a lot of concerns about the Falcons, particularly around Desmond Ridder. So give me the Jags.
your boy Evan Ingram, showing up to the party like 4 years too late.
Mhm. Mm-hmm. I thought it was like 7 years.
Well, but you pronounced him as your TE2 in fantasy. I think one of the first years we did this podcast, so maybe it was 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So
That was
Sunday
terrible.
1 o'clock slate starts with Dolphins
When's
at
this game at
Bills.
1 o'clock?
Yeah, this shouldn't be a 1 o'clock game. Dolphins at Bills. Bills are favored by 3 at home. Um, I'll start, I guess. This is a doozy, just because the Bills have played really, really well the last couple of weeks against some overmatched teams. But this is not a typical game in Buffalo. This is going to be on October 1st. So basically, still summertime. The weather's not going to be horrifying for the Dolphins to manage, and the Dolphins have beaten the Bills when Tua's been healthy, and even when he wasn't, they played him close. I'm not interested in laying points on the Bills here. I'm taking Miami.
I am also taking Miami. I think Miami's a better team than Buffalo. I don't want to be a victim of recency bias or whatever, because the Dolphins just ran all over Denver. But like, I mean, the Bills laying 3 points seems like way too many points, considering that the Dolphins just scored 70. So give me the Dolphins and more points for some reason.
Yeah,
All right, Corey.
this was definitely a doozy. I had a hard time picking this one, but I ultimately decided to go with the Bills. So I'll be lone wolfing this one. I feel like the Bills have a really good defense. The Dolphins do not. The Dolphins' defense has actually been kind of bad so far this year. And the offenses, so far, the Dolphins have been better, but I also think that they have had the benefit of playing worse defenses so far. I mean, they started with the Chargers, who just give up crazy numbers of yards and points every week. They always want to be part of a track meet. The Broncos' defense was abysmal last week, and their offense kept turning the ball over to them and giving them short fields. Like, let's not look past that. Part of the reason that the Dolphins scored 70 points is because they were consistently taking over the ball on the right side of the 50. It's not like they kept driving 80 yards every single drive and finishing with 6. They were gifted short fields regularly in that game. I don't think the Bills are going to do that. Their offense is not going to turn the ball over the way that the Broncos did. They're not going to consistently give them great field position. They're going to burn clock. This is a tough one. The Dolphins could easily cover the spread, but I went with the Bills.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of disagree with the idea that the Bills won't turn the ball over. We've seen YOLO Josh come to life, especially against teams like the Dolphins and the Jets, where he gets a little bit impatient, and the Dolphins do have some opportunistic players. So it's going to come down to whether or not Josh Allen can be secure with the football. And if he can, they'll probably win and probably cover. But if he can't, they're going to lose. So that's where it all comes out as far as I'm concerned. Vikings at Panthers. The Vikings are 3.5-point road favorites. I'm going first again because I'm taking the Panthers. The Panthers defense is good.
Yes.
The rest of their team, or it has been, yeah, they've played pretty stoutly on defense. The Vikings turn the ball over left and right. The Vikings defense isn't particularly good. We saw the Panthers offense do a little something this week against the Seahawks. If I'm getting points on the home team against a hapless team like the Vikings, I've got to take the points. Somebody go.
Corey, please go.
Okay,
I have no
I'll go.
idea.
First of all, the Panthers defense has not been good. They rank 24th in the NFL. So, like, that's not true. That said, 3.5 is too much to
24th in
lay.
what stat? In
What's that?
DVOA or what?
That's by DVOA, but they're also like way down in the rankings if you look at more traditional stats. If you don't want to think about DVOA this early in the season when there still aren't defensive adjustments, like that's fine. They've also been bad by pretty much every other metric you can look at. They've been
They
bottom
gave
half of
up
the league, if not bottom
37 to
third.
the Seahawks.
What's that?
They gave 37 to the Seahawks last week.
Yeah,
The
the
Seahawks got
Panthers are
some
not a
dudes.
good defense, not at all. But again, as I was
They
saying,
gave up 24 to the Falcons.
I'm not laying 3.5 points and taking an 0-3 Vikings team that just does not want to win a game, doesn't want to cover a spread. I'm not going to do it. I'm probably going to regret it, but I'm not going to do it.
I don't think you're gonna regret it. You'll be fine.
Eric, I was feeling what you were saying, about the Panthers. Corey, you basically said the same thing, and I disagreed with that somehow. So give me the Vikings. Lay the points. Why not?
So to fully acknowledge, I forgot that the Seahawks put up that many points on the Panthers this week. So my claim that the Panthers defense is good is based off of nothing. So there you go. Although they were actually good against the Falcons. Bryce Young threw a couple of picks, and the offense couldn't stay on the field. But they got stops in that game, and they got stops against the Saints. But as we've seen, maybe the Saints' offense just sucks, and the Falcons' offense doesn't look very good either. So, first it seems like their first shot against an actual offense, they got run pretty badly. So, Panthers' defense seemingly not so good, but still rolling with them. Broncos at Bears. Oh my God. What?
This game shouldn't be. Why can't this
Just
game be in
cancel the
London?
game.
Yeah.
Cancel the game. But since we're not doing that, give me the points in the Bears. Jeez.
Yeah, that's exactly where I am too. I'm taking the points. The Bears are getting 3.5 at home against a team that just gave up 70. Like, this is such an atrocious matchup for us to have to be subjected to.
Both teams
I'm
should
so
wear their
glad.
orange uniforms.
I'm so glad that this game is among 9 others in the 1:00 window so that Red Zone can avoid it as much as humanly
it, yeah,
possible.
please.
This game has to be the one that is not included on the Octobox to begin the day.
This game should be in London on ESPN Plus.
No,
Yeah, on Nickelodeon.
because this should not
Yes.
be a game that is the only football game happening during any window of time.
Put it on the CW.
Yeah, on the CW. Exactly. Put it on the CW.
Oh my God. Evan, you still have to make a pick. I'm sorry.
The Bears give me a vibe of a team that's quit. So I'm
What do the
going
Broncos give you
Denver.
the vibe of?
A team that, has a quarterback who maybe foolishly believes in his own abilities too much. The Broncos are a better team despite also being awful. Just the Bears are the most awful.
3.5.
Picking the
on road.
Bears to win nothing. Kidding me?
All right. Evan's going for a ride.
Just riding on the bucking Broncos, man. That's dangerous.
You picked the Bears. What have they done to earn your
They're-
trust?
Nothing,
got
but they're
points.
getting points at home. So
They got points for this matchup.
yes, this game could end in a 0-0 tie, and if that happens, I win. So there you go.
The Broncos could win 3-0, and we win.
They could win 73-70, and we win. It doesn't matter. All right.
The Bears
Ravens.
score 70 points all year.
They haven't scored 20 points in like some really ridiculous since like week 12 of last year. They suck, man. I'm telling you. Eberflus has to go. He's lost like 13 straight games.
I thought this was his first year.
This is his second year.
Yeah, he
he
was
coached
their
them
coach
last
last
year.
Yikes.
Awful.
Aren't they 3-14 or something?
Yes, another 0-3.
3-17.
Oh my God. All right. Ravens at Browns. Evan, this is your team. So
Cleveland.
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
This Raven team looks like a mess right now. So, give me Cleveland. Cleveland's defense is legit. Ravens offense is all injured and pathetic and incompetent, despite having one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The Ravens defense is a sieve, soft and squishy up the middle, like I said. So yeah, Browns.
Eric's over here forgetting to tell us the spread, so our listeners might think we're picking these straight up. The Browns are laying 2.5. I am also taking the Browns.
I was going to say something. Evan kind of jumped in there pretty quickly.
Oh.
That's okay. Like, Evan just to me said Cleveland, and I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
Cleveland.
Yeah, I was going to get to the part where the Browns are laying 2.5 at home. This spread indicates that the teams are of similar quality. From what I've seen, I don't agree with that. The Browns defense is dominant. The Browns offense is shaky.
It's
Yeah,
shaky, but it's passable.
Yeah, but it's not garbage, right? And the Ravens don't they just don't win.
Everything's shaky.
Yeah, they don't win games like this anything but really close. Like if they win, it's going to come down to like they're down like friggin' 14-13 and Tucker's got to come out and kick a 56-yard field goal and Gale Force wins and somehow he bangs it through and they win by 2. Like there's just like we talk about how 2.5 versus 3 or 3.5. Teams win by 2 more frequently than you realize. So there is some value in getting those points. But I'm sorry, I'm acting like the Browns aren't favored. I don't know. I gotta go with the Browns here, right? Like the Ravens are untrustworthy. The Browns really should be 3-0 if they didn't have some of the goofiest plays you'll ever see against the Steelers. They gave up 2 defensive touchdowns, right? Like that's how they lost that game in a squeaker, was because they gave up 2 defensive touchdowns, and the Steelers' defense is way better than Baltimore's. So yeah, easy choice. All right, Steelers at Texans. Steelers are laying 3 on the road. I'll start this one. Give me the Texans. CJ Stroud is playing well. The Steelers' offense, I think, is pretty bootylicious, to be honest. And, I kind of like what D'Amico Ryans is doing. He has his team competing. If I can get 3 points for the home team with a frisky Texans team against a Steelers team I don't really buy into right now, I'm going to do it. So give me the Texans.
Yeah, this one's tough because the Steelers, I think, overall are the better team, largely because of their defense. But I wouldn't pick them to cover a 9-point spread at home, which is what this implies. So I'm also taking the Texans this week. As you said, C.J. Stroud has been good. Tank Dell has been good. Dameon Pierce, has been fine. Their defense is not great, but they've got a lot of young pieces. They got some new pieces over the offseason. I think that they're starting to gel and find at least a little bit of a stride. And I think that they'll be perfectly fine against an underwhelming Steelers offense. My only concern is how that Texans offense can compete against a really good Steelers defense. But again, laying 3 on the road, that's not doing it for me in this one.
I'm laying the points, Pittsburgh. I don't see how the Texans they're not going to be able to score against the Steelers defense. Steelers defense that's opportunistic. If they're not really good, they somehow find the football. I feel like Stroud's going to get sacked a bunch, and just lead to short fields for Pittsburgh. I don't think the Steelers are going to turn the ball over to Houston as much as Houston's going to turn it over to Pittsburgh. I feel like this is sort of a not a get right game, but get better game for the Steelers, and kind of a wake up call for Houston. Like, oh, we're not quite that level yet.
Is Najee Harris good?
No.
I don't think he is. I think he sucks. He's slow, man. He's got no burst.
Yeah.
All right. Rams at Colts. This is kind of a weird matchup. The Rams shocked us all in week 1 with their blowout win against the Seahawks, and then they competed pretty well against the 49ers, whose defense we all like a lot. And then this week against the Bengals, who we all picked them to at least cover the spread, they were non-existent. They kicked 3 field goals like that. That was garbage. Meanwhile, the Colts have been fun. I don't know if Anthony Richardson will be back for this game or if it'll still be Gardner Minshew. Either way,
he practiced in full today, so he's still, I guess, technically in the concussion protocol. I don't know how that works with him being a full participant and taking first-team reps, but it seems like he is on track to play this weekend.
Okay, yeah, that would be the conclusion I would draw if he was a full participant on a Wednesday practice. So I'm going to assume he's a go. I honestly don't know what that means for this game because, Gardner Minshew is probably one of the better backups, and Anthony Richardson, as exciting as he is, he's a rookie and he can be had. But yeah, let me get I'm going to go with the Rams, actually. Aaron Donald's going to wreak havoc on this offensive line. They're getting points on the road. I'll take my chances with LA bouncing back and getting this win.
Well, Evan will decide which one of us is lone wolfing it because I am taking the Colts, and it wasn't really a difficult decision for me. I think the Colts are the better team between the two, and they're only laying 1.5 at home. The Rams defense, yes, Aaron Donald is still playing really well, but as a whole, that unit is trash so far this year. They've been horrible. The Colts defense has actually been decent. They're not in the top 10, but they're in the top half of the league. The offense is meh, but honestly, so is the Rams offense. The Rams offense, they're moving the ball pretty well. They're getting a lot of yards, but they're not punching it into the end zone. And that's kind of important in this league.
Well, what is the Rams offense or the Rams defense is terrible? What's that based on?
Their DVO is 26th.
Okay, but one of those games was against the 49ers, who are a juggernaut offense. So they held the Seahawks down to like 13 points, and we've seen what they can do the last 2 weeks. And they didn't give up a whole lot to the Bengals this week. Now, granted, we know Burrow's hurt, and that's affected them, but they
Burrow's
lost like 19-9.
And overall, the play calling for the Bengals has been trash. And honestly, I'm still not sure about that week 1 game against the Seahawks, whether we chalk that up to the Rams defense being really dominant against them or the Seahawks just having a bad first week on offense.
Apparently the Rams scored 16 points on Monday night against the Bengals.
Okay, I thought I guess they got like a late touchdown or something.
I went to sleep.
Yeah, it wasn't much of a game. And by the way, can we just say unequivocally, the staggered Monday night game experiment that needs to stop. That's
I don't like that either.
I hate it so much.
I think there's
awful. I think there's one more week later in the season we might have it again.
Ugh.
Why? All right, Evan, you got to make a pick here.
I honestly have no idea, but my gut says LA.
Yeah, I was about to pick the Colts, and then I was like, nah. Guts leaning another way, so. Okay, Buccaneers at my Saints. Oh my God, this is brutal. Jameis Winston revenge game, maybe. Yeah. I guess I got to pick it first because it's my team. That's usually what we do. The Buccaneers. I honestly thought the Buccaneers, considering what the Eagles' defense was doing to their offensive line, I thought Baker actually held up respectably. He had the one bad pick where he just didn't see a guy or whatever. It was a good defensive play. But other than that, he was still delivering the ball mostly on target. He didn't seem to get rattled too much, but it was just Philly's defense just really stepped up and was overwhelming that team. I don't think the Saints front provides nearly that much pressure. I mean, they're pretty good, but not as good. And the Saints offense just can't really get out of first gear, it seems, right now. So, I know Alvin Kamara is back, but I'm actually rolling with the Bucs.
Oh. I'm rolling with Tampa Bay too. Because I feel like Tampa Bay always wins in New Orleans, and then when it seems like the Saints aren't going to be able to handle the Bucs at all, they go down to Tampa Bay and roll them, even if they had Tom Brady. So I like the Bucks in this one. The Bucks defense is still pretty good, and uh, the Bucks defense knows all too well about how Jameis Winston is very prone to turning the ball over.
Yes, that is very true.
Yeah,
All
history
right,
is not on my
Corey.
side here, but I'm lone wolfing a third game and taking the Saints. Um, I think that the Saints offense and the Bucks defense are fairly evenly matched. The Bucks offense, or the Bucks defense rather, is, I would say, middle of the pack in the NFL. They're not bad, but they're also not really good. The Saints offense, I would say the same about. I don't think that Jameis Winston is necessarily a big step down from Derek Carr, and certainly getting Alvin Kamara back off of suspension, I think at least balances out any downgrade that Jameis Winston would represent, and potentially actually gives them an overall upgraded offense based on or compared to what they were the first 3 weeks of the season. And so when you take all that together, I feel like the two teams are fairly evenly matched on a whole. On the whole, the Saints maybe even just a little bit better, and they're only laying 3 as the home team. I'm gonna go with them.
Well, I hope you're right because the Saints need to win this week. All right, moving on to the Manders at the Eagles. Corey quickly penciled in Eagles for himself. He can just as quickly pencil in Eagles for me. Evan.
Sweep it, Eagles.
Yeah,
I thought
I'm
it
not
was
making
pretty
that mistake
obvious,
again.
too. All right, so I figured that would be a quick one. Moving on to Bengals at Titans. Bengals are laying 2.5 points at Tennessee. Wow, this is like if you had told me this would be the line, 3 weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, pound the Bengals all the way. But oh man, the Bengals offense just like with Burrow not being Burrow, it just feels a little off right now. Tennessee's defense has had some moments, I guess. They played the
Their
Browns.
front
though.
four is ferocious.
Yeah, they've got a
But,
good
like,
front four, but
their linebackers and secondary.
yeah, they can
Not
be
where it's
picked
at.
apart for sure. And with the offensive weapons that the Bengals have, I think that I'm going to go with the Bengals on this one. I'm going to roll with them to cover the 2.5 point line on the road. I think the Titans' offense sucks. Derrick Henry was shockingly bad for Derrick Henry's status.
Haven't heard from him.
Yeah, and when that's going on, you lose all faith in Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't have much faith in the Titans. Last year, on average, T. Higgins played better in even number weeks. So I'm gonna assume that maybe that's just gonna continue this year. He was terrible week 1 and 3, really good week 2, so he'll be back this
Even
week.
number
and
weeks.
Yeah.
What about even number games? Right after their bye, it'll flip, right?
Corey has to really analyze the schedule at that point and keep track.
Right, like say it'll be week 8, but it's only their 7th game, for example.
If you count it that way, he was also pretty good in even number games because after the bye he was pretty consistently good. But,
So there's no stat here.
well, but early in the season before that bye, he was good in even number weeks. He was bad in odd number weeks. So, I mean, I found that. I looked it up. That's not me making up a stat, but it also means nothing. But I'm going to use it to pick the Bengals.
I mean, no stats
That's-
are made
that's
up,
because-
but you can make them say whatever you want.
I mean,
So I got Cincinnati too, by the way.
I mean, let's be real. Yeah, like Corey, you wanted to pick the Bengals, so you just were like, "Hey, let me throw some weird stuff in there." To
Yeah,
make it
I'd
sound
already
like
picked
extra-
the Bengals before I even looked that up. I was just like, oh, I wonder if there's anything about this with T. Higgins. Oh, there is.
Yeah, you put on your sunglasses for extra smart there, I guess. You just added in some nonsense to make it sound even better. But we're all on the same page on that one. I would be curious. I know, Corey, week 1 you tracked how well we did when we were unanimously picking a game. Do you still have stats like that? Because maybe we should be taking that to the window.
I actually did not look at that last week, but I can look it up real quick while we're talking about the next game.
Okay, well, not. Well, I guess we do have to talk about it a little bit because it's a goofy game in the Vegas zone. But 4:05 Raiders at Chargers. Chargers are laying 5.5 at quote unquote home. So Yeah, the Chargers don't have a home field advantage, especially not in Los Angeles against the Raiders. This is going to be a Raiders home game. The Raiders have been pretty bad for the most part. They kind of got lucky to even be in the game against the Steelers. They were the beneficiaries of a pretty questionable roughing the passer call. It seemed like the refs were kind of keeping the Raiders in it a little bit there. But at the same time, they've got Devontae Adams. They've got a guy who can move the chains. The Chargers defense stinks. Their coach is an idiot, but so is the Raiders coach, who decided to kick a field goal down 8 with like 2 minutes to go because he just needed 2 more after that to win the game.
The Packers coach do that against Tom Brady in the 2020 NFC Championship game?
Yes, he did. That was on a 4th and 8, and there was a little more time, and they had timeouts, but it was similarly dumb. You needed to score a touchdown there. But anyway, this is the only reason I'm hesitant to pick the Raiders in this one is because of Josh McDaniels. I mean, he kind of evens out almost the Brandon Staley coaching mismatch here. But I'm going to do it anyway, much to my questionable judgment. I'm taking the Raiders.
I am on the Raiders. Like you said, it's a Raiders home game. When all the California teams were shuffling around, the team that LA really wanted was the Raiders, and that was the one team they didn't get. So, Raiders. I mean, they might. They're not going to roll. But like the Chargers defense is so terrible, and I think Josh McDaniels is a better coach than Brandon Staley. That's about it. But give me the Raiders in a track meet. They keep it close, but they probably lose.
Yeah, I just don't like the number there. Corey, who do you got?
You are on mute, sir.
Oh, thank you. I was saying that the Raiders defense is almost exactly as bad as the Chargers defense is, and the Chargers offense is a lot better than the Raiders. Now, granted, the Chargers just lost Mike Williams for the season. I was trying to look up what the latest is on Austin Eckler because he's listed as questionable. It looks like he returned to practice today in a limited fashion.
Hello, can you get on the field, please?
So we'll see if he ends up playing. If he does, then I think it's
Kelly's
an easy
been
pick.
So great as a replacement for him.
What was that?
Who spent a bunch of money on that bum?
Probably me.
To pick him up off the waiver.
Yeah.
I think that if Eckler does play in this game, that makes this a super easy pick to go with the Chargers. Without him, it's a little bit more iffy because, like Eric said, I think that the coaching matchup is probably pretty even. But as far as the on-the-field product, the actual players, even without Eckler, I think that the Chargers are the better team. And so I'm going to roll with them even though I'm laying 5.5. So this is my 4th Lone Wolf pick.
I don't think the Chargers cover this line with LaDainian Tomlinson in the backfield. Like, what evidence says that the Chargers can cover any line, right? Like, I can't trust them. I cannot. Right? Their defense is garbage. They have no idea what they're doing on offense. They don't know how to use their players to their best ability.
They've been using Keenan Allen to his best ability for sure this year. Keenan Allen has been better than Devontae Adams this season, and Justin Herbert is markedly better than Jimmy G, who may or may not even play this week. Jimmy G's hurt.
I mean, he's also not good. But I can't trust the Chargers as far as I can throw. So
who's the Raiders' backup?
I have no idea.
I don't even know.
Is it Tom Brady?
If it's Nathan Peterman, I'm going to be really sad about my pick.
Let's see here. The
I don't think it
Raiders'
is, though.
backup quarterback is Brian Hoyer.
Oh, okay.
That could be worse. Okay. Yeah, let's move on to...
Before we do, I did go back and look at our records when we all agreed on the same team. Week 1, we went 4-2. Week 2, we went 4-1-1. There was the Saints push. And then last week, we went 6-6. So we lost money last week on games that we agreed on.
But we're up for the year. But then again,
we
me
are.
and Corey are way up for the year, too. I don't know what Evan's doing.
I'm picking the Jets.
All right, 425. Patriots at Cowboys. The Cowboys are 6.5-point favorites. Corey, you start this time because I feel like it's been me the last couple.
I'd take the Patriots. Again, I don't necessarily want to let what just happened last week completely cloud my opinion of this team, but that was a really poor performance by the Cowboys defense. And the Patriots offense has shown that it can be a little bit frisky. They've been very inconsistent in the way that they've gotten things done. Ramondre Stevenson can be really good. He can also be really irrelevant. Mac Jones somehow is actually playing semi-decently this year.
Is he?
He's playing well when he targets the tight ends.
Okay, great. Good for him.
Okay. I didn't know Rob Gronkowski played for the Patriots again. Like there's Hunter
In any case-
Henry and the other guy. Who's the other guy?
Who
I
is
do
that
like the
guy?
Patriots defense, though. The Patriots defense has played well this year. The Cowboys offense hasn't shown me anything yet to suggest that they can play well for 60 minutes. So I'm going to take the 6.5 points.
All right, Evan. These are your two
Cowboys
favorite
roll.
teams. Cowboys roll, huh?
Yeah, Cowboys roll. It's a big wake-up call for Dallas to be publicly embarrassed like they were, right? That, you know, you can everybody has a clunker every now and then, but like, it can't happen again, right? The Cowboys are definitely the better team than the Patriots on paper, and I think 6.5 points is kind of an overreaction to last week. People's like, oh well, Dallas obviously sucks because
What do you think the
they-
line
they-
should
they
be, Evan?
got toasted by the Cardinals.
Yeah,
I
like
don't-
guess the line. So what would you say? You haven't listened to this week's podcast, so
No, I mean, I would say, if it's 6.5, I feel like 8-ish is appropriate, right? Like the Cowboys should win by about that much. Like what? I'm not feeling the Patriots.
I'm not feeling the Patriots either. I'm taking the Cowboys. I'm a little apprehensive because we keep having Corey with all these lone wolf picks again, and whenever he's got like 6 of those or 7, he always seems to win more than he doesn't, and he's won more than he's lost. But
Blow World Series.
all right. Yeah, I think the Cowboys defense delivers some big hits on McCorkle. They play with a little bit of vengeance for Sauce Gardner's nuts. Yeah, maybe the
What?
Cowboys go out there. Apparently, Mac gave Sauce Gardner a little sack tap.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so
This is what happens when we go to the amusement park on Sundays, man. I just miss everything.
I saw the replay of this several times. All right, so yeah, I think the Cowboys defense plays well, and I think they get some turnovers and get a bunch of sacks, and Mac starts crying, and they lose by at least 7. So, all right, Cardinals at 49ers. Dear God, I have to imagine this is the biggest spread of the week.
It is.
Wow, 14 points is a lot. And I think it's too much. I think the Cardinals have been frisky. I know the 49ers are way better. I fully expect them to win. But, the Cardinals have hung around a little bit. And, we've seen the 49ers, like I'm not sure the Rams are actually good, but they let them hang around and eventually cover the spread because who kicks the field goal there? But that's another thing. Yeah, 14 points is too much. I don't see any real value in laying that many points. I think it's too risky, so I'm taking the Cardinals.
Yeah,
I
that's
think the
exactly where I
Niners-
am.
Oh, the Cardinals are going to get curb stomped in this game.
Probably
Niners.
Yeah, you're probably right, but there's such backdoor opportunities with a spread that big.
Yeah, but like
That's
the
too much.
Cardinals,
I'm telling you, the Cardinals are a little better than we gave them credit for. I think we have to acknowledge that.
What if they punched above their weight class against Dallas and they, sort of regress to the mean the other way?
But it's been 3 weeks of them playing pretty respectable football. Like I think they've covered every week.
And they play the Giants, who are
So
terrible.
you thought they were going to make the playoffs or something like that?
Well, that was a foolish thought to think, wasn't it?
a little bit.
Eric, you and
Alright.
I both had the Dolphins missing the playoffs.
Yeah, that's looking
Yikes.
pretty regrettable. I will
Oh
acknowledge
no! I
that.
don't know where my notepad is, but yikes!
They might be the 1 seed.
Very large yikes.
Yes, big yikes on that one. Sunday Night Football, Chiefs at. Oh, before we get to that one, let me just count something real quick. Oh, so we've actually got a decent number of 4 o'clock games this week, not 3.
No, we have 3.
That
Oh,
is
there's
a good.
4.
Oh, there's only 4. I
No,
thought there was 5.
there are 3.
Really?
Oh no, there's 3.
What's going on?
Yeah,
Come
they did
on.
it to us again.
I
That's
fell
ridiculous.
asleep during the 4 o'clock window.
And all
on
of them
Sunday.
have pretty big spreads, so these games could all be blowouts.
I woke up at like 8 o'clock, and Red Zone had ended like an hour prior. No, missed all
I
of it.
sat and watched the entire period that I could watch. Sunday Night Football, Chiefs at Jets. Corey, since you've already typed it in, regale us with your wisdom.
Chiefs roll.
Okay. I agree. Chiefs roll.
I agree as well. Chiefs roll.
I like it when they're easy. Monday Night Football, the only Monday Night Football game. We've got the Manning
joy.
as well. Yes, Seahawks at Giants. I feel like we had a Monday night game with this matchup last year, but I could be wrong. That was just Geno Smith revenge game. Seahawks at Giants. Giants are laying 1.5 at the Meadowlands. That's ridiculous. Give me the Seahawks.
Once again, we have back-to-back primetime games at the Meadowlands for some reason. Neither one of these games deserve to be on TV. They just represent New York City. That's
Shouldn't
it,
be on
right?
TV at all. Forget
should
prime
be,
time. They
you
should
know,
not be on
buried
TV at any time.
Way down the sheet on
So on the
Sunday
CW
o'clock.
again. Yeah.
Yeah,
More
yeah,
CW.
CW.
football.
This should be like a 1
Seahawks.
a.m. Eastern time kickoff.
I mean, might as well.
Didn't they have a Raiders game where they had some type of weird postponement? They had to play the game at like starting at like midnight or something like that. It was really weird.
I don't remember that.
It was a few years back. It was wild. I stayed up and watched it because I'm a psycho.
Okay. Seahawks, come on. The
Go
Giants
Hawks.
don't have a team over there.
All right. Well, Corey penciled in Seahawks. Do you have any additional points there, Corey, or just agree with what we said?
This is probably the biggest slam dunk of the week, honestly. I mean,
I
the Giants
am
have been
inclined to
terrible.
agree.
Are the lines typed in correctly?
Yes.
Right? Like,
I double checked. I triple checked that
Okay.
one. I double checked all of them. I triple checked that one because I couldn't believe
Yeah, you had to
that
do
the
a double
Giants
take
were
on that one.
favored.
You're gonna be kidding me.
like the Seahawks are 13th in DVOA right now and the Giants are 31st. How are
who
they
was
favored?
32nd?
Like there's got to be something that we're missing.
Probably the
Some
Bears.
gargantuan injury on the report that I'm just not seeing.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So
Maybe
Uh,
Lawrence Taylor's playing.
I don't think that would be enough.
I don't.
What
know
about
if you-
Lawrence Taylor and Michael Strahan?
Maybe.
Sure.
What if Eli suits up again? Instead
Ooh,
of calling
no, that
his-
swings it right back to the Seahawks.
You gotta remember, it's a
Maybe.
regular season game. Eli Magic only comes out in the post.
Oh, okay.
I don't care which former Giants quarterback suits up. It swings it right back to the Seahawks. Eli swings it back to the Seahawks. Phil Simms swings it back to the Seahawks. Maybe Jeff Hostetler. I might keep it at the Giants.
Sure. Okay. So that wraps up our picks for the week. Thank you guys for participating in the Pick'em contest. Corey, you have some stats to reveal on that, I'm sure, about who did what this week that didn't involve us. So go ahead.
Yeah, James Daly won the Week 3 fan contest. It's his third week in a row winning, second week in a row that he won on a tiebreaker because him and multiple other entries tied. The tiebreaker this week was the combined receiving yardage for Puka Nacua and Jamar Chase in the late Monday night game. He guessed 222. The correct total was 213, so he was actually pretty close. He was only 9 yards off. So James currently leading the fan contest and 1 point ahead of Evan. Still trailing you and me though, Eric.
Well, I mean, being ahead of me, so that doesn't mean a whole lot.
You might get voted off the podcast if you can't pick it up, man. Let's go.
Okay.
Speaking
Yeah.
of voting
Send
off,
us-
Survivor Season 45 began tonight.
Oh, that was tonight. Oh,
Shout out. Nice.
yeah.
All right, so before we wrap up the show and get to shout outs, I got some updates on the baseball front. The Chicago Cubs are currently in the bottom of the 10th inning with the Braves. The Cubs got their ghost runner or automatic runner or fake runner, whatever you want to call it, to score. But the Braves now have their opportunity. They've got one out with the runner on third, so that game is far from over. The Miami Marlins are currently tied 2-2 with the Mets in the bottom of the 8th inning. The Mets have 2 runners on, but 2 outs in that inning. The Texas Rangers are up 1-0 on the LA Angels. That game just got underway. It's the middle of the second. The Houston Astros and Seattle Mariners. Mariners are up 1-0 in the top of the second, but the Astros do have a runner on second with 2 outs, so an opportunity to tie that game up. And I think that's all the relevant games. I guess I should mention the Padres are currently trailing the San Francisco Giants 1-0 in the bottom of the second of that game. So there you go. And the Orioles won already, as Evan mentioned. I think that covers all the. Oh, and the Blue Jays lost to the Yankees again. So sucks to be them.
I think that's the Yankees' 81st win, right? So they're not going to have a losing season.
So they're not going to be sucked this year. Good for them.
I mean, I don't know about all that, but
It's disappointing, that's for sure. All right. So I think that does it for the show. Do we have any late breaking news or Woj bombs, or did Jimmy Butler's accusation of tampering come true and the Bucks have to squash the trade? I don't think so. So
and the Braves tied it. Acuna
go.
was batting, so 5-5 bottom 10.
No surprise there. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in. If we don't have anything else, last call. Okay, we're good. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can reach us at thesportsballers@gmail.com if you want to send us fan mail or questions or anything you want to hear us talk about on the podcast, or just tell us how we're doing, whether it's good or bad. We don't care. We just want to hear from people. You can get this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all the major podcatchers. We are on them. And if you have a special podcatcher, we will do what we can to get on there if you just let us know. Again, hit that email. You can follow us on Twitter at SportsBallers18. You can also follow us individually. Corey is at Corey Puffett. I am at Quagmire67, and Evan is at Evan_Ash13. Before we get out of here, shout outs. Anything?
Shout out to the Buzzed Bars Coaster Club for hosting and putting together an amazing event up at Hershey Park. Despite the terrible weather, it actually worked out pretty good on Saturday because, there was promised torrential rain, and I guess around 3 or 4 o'clock or so, the rain just stopped till about 11. So we were able to get a whole bunch of rides in without buying any skip the line passes or anything. A little chilly, a little breezy, but no rain. So able to ride as much as we want.
Yes, indeed. That ERT on Wildcats Revenge was incredible.
Oh yeah.
Corey, any shout outs?
I guess just shout out to Scott Sicko. Last Friday, Eric wasn't available to call the game with us, so Scott Sicko stepped into the booth, did a great job as the color commentator. I transitioned over to play-by-play, which usually I'm pretty comfortable with, but it's been a little while since I've done play-by-play for football, so I was a little out of practice, but he did a really good job. And he's going to join Eric and me in the booth this week for a 3-man tag team.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. I got 2 shout outs. They're both kind of humorous, but we'll do it anyway. A shout out to Jorge Mateo. Yes, Evan, I did say that. Shout out to Jorge Mateo. The reason I'm shouting him out is because late in the game this week, the game was basically decided, but Jordan Westbrook ran a little too close to Mateo while pursuing a pop-up. Mateo was camped under it, and so Mateo kind of flipped the ball up in the air so Westbrook could have a chance to catch a pop fly, and it earned a rare smile from the notoriously stoic rookie. Not something you typically see from Jordan Westbrook. So a little bit of remember earlier this year we had a little bit of a seemingly beef developing between Adam Frazier and Gunnar Henderson, where Adley had to basically be Dadley Rutschman and go out there and go have to separate you two. And that was not the case.
Walloping the Blue Jays.
Yes,
like over and over
for the 10th time this year. But this was definitely the opposite of that, and it was a nice little moment. I just figured I'd write it down. And my
Okay.
my second shout out is definitely more ridiculing. Shout out to Jimmy Garoppolo, because I called it as soon as he started pointing to where he wanted to throw his interception. Damn it, he threw an interception right there. So it was excellent to see. I mentioned it on the chat that I was sort of practicing my own play-by-play a little bit with the game I was watching, and I even said out loud to myself, Jimmy Garoppolo steps up in the pocket, points to where he wants to throw this interception, and then it's intercepted. So it was a delight to see from a player that
Wow.
delivers moments like that frequently, because he sucks. But I'm glad he did it because it made me laugh. All right, so that does it for our show this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, Evan will be running the show. Hopefully, we will be together. If not, we'll just be doing this remote thing again, and hopefully, we can make the technology work. I'm sure we'll have some more conversations as the postseason for baseball gets underway. We'll recap what happened in week 4 of the football season and do our week 5 thing as well. So until then, take it easy.